Okay.
Good evening. Yeah.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening,
Good
everyone.
evening. Good evening.
I'm
Good
here.
evening.
Good evening. Good evening, everyone.
Good
Good
evening.
evening, ma'am. Very good evening.
Good evening, ma'am. Good evening.
Can we have that privilege? If you can please switch on your camera so that we can have a quick photograph with thumbs up. We have to post it on our LinkedIn account. A quick photograph. Oh my God, I can see Roshali. Hi. Hi, Anjita. Few more. You're on mute.
Amazing. Everybody, big smiles. Thank you.
Biggest is coming from Vidur. Okay. So, good evening once again. All the people who are with us for the 7th session. We are on day 4 today, right? So today we have 2 sessions. The first session will be on prototyping innovation, and the second session is one of the most important sessions is IPR. So both of the sessions are very important, especially when we talk about innovation, entrepreneurship, and design thinking. So I'll take this opportunity of introducing Vidur. Mr. Vidur Bhatnagar is an award-winning product and engineering leader with a successful record of delivering global-scale digital products, including two times at his startups. Currently, as a principal technologist at Amazon, Vidur is computer scientist, experienced in customer discovery, data analytics, UI, UX, and strategy. He has led several cross-functional teams through ideation, development, and product launches. At the University of Pennsylvania, while pursuing his master's in robotics, he founded Keratin, a widely acclaimed NICU breast milk management company. Oh, that's great. As its CEO, he raised more than $1.5 billion and sold 1 million plus in multi-year hospital contracts. And as its CTO, he held the development of mission-critical suite of 4 products. Previously, he has served as the youngest product owner globally at SAP Labs, where he was also a technical fellow in the MD's office. Vidur has also been conferred the status of an individual with extraordinary ability by the US government for his innovative work, several national and international awards, and multiple patents. We are so proud to have you, Mr. Vidur Bhatnagar, today for this FDP. And you'll be happy to know that very soon you can find more than 100 people joining us for this faculty development program.
Excellent.
So the session is all yours. Please take it forward.
Thank you so much for the kind words, ma'am. And thank you all for joining this session on prototyping innovation. I'll quickly share my screen. Please let me know if you can now see my slides.
Yes, sir. Prototyping innovation. Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you. So I will not necessarily be sharing how to prototype today, but rather how to prioritize your prototyping, especially in the phase when we are stuck with everything being the highest priority or P0. And while you might have attended previous sessions on similar topics, I promise you I will share something totally unique with you today. And before we start, I would like to extend my deepest gratitude to my professors at JP. I was both a student at JIIT and JBS. And the fact that I'm able to come back and share with you my industry learnings was only possible because of what my teachers at JP have taught me. So big thank you and such an honor to be invited for this session today. Okay, so let's start with something we all love, and that's cakes, right? We all went through a crazy bake fest during the pandemic, didn't we? And don't we all wish that our baking process looks something like this? Sweet and simple all the way through to success. But instead, it often looks like this, and then some, finally culminating into a whole lot of mess. We all plan for the best, but millions of things can go wrong when we are building a product. However, there is something in our control that, if done right, it does not guarantee success, But if done wrong, it mostly ends up with our projects or products looking like the cake on the right. And that is prototyping. But how do you prototype the right way? And the answer to that is prioritization. Everybody talks about prioritizing ruthlessly. We all know prioritizing is important. We know the importance of working backwards from our customers' needs, figuring out our 5 whys, the business flywheels, and so on and so forth. But very often we overlook how this is all interconnected. So today, I will not only talk about how to prioritize ruthlessly, but also what are the inputs to prioritization. Before that, just a quick hello. I'm Vidar. I graduated from JP or JIIT in 2012 and JBS in 2013 with a dual degree in Bachelor's in Com Science and MBA in HR. I sold my first startup in 2013, which I was building when I was at JP, after which I joined SAP Labs as a technical fellow. I am currently at Amazon, managing products that handle compensation for 1.5 million employees globally for a total of $15 billion. And previously, I've built and managed products from augmented reality platforms all the way to Moneyball for cricket. And I have twice been a founder before. And today, I'm going to tell you the story of my second startup, which is Keratin, and how 3 engineers built the world's most advanced breast milk management platform for neonatal ICUs or NICUs. During this presentation, I will take you through the stages of how we built a product from scratch, how we prototyped, and how I built a company from a hackathon and took it all the way to market. But wait, why breast milk management? So chances are really high that either you or someone you know has had a baby who had to be admitted in the NICU. In US alone, each year, about 500,000 or 500,000 babies are admitted to one of the 1,100 NICUs in the country. And one such year, one such baby was my nephew. Interesting fact, in the list of top 10 countries with NICU admissions, which has countries like Zambia, Pakistan, US is the only developed nation at number 6. And unfortunately, India is at number 1 with 2 million NICU admissions per year. And for these little babies, breast milk is liquid gold. Empirical research has proven that babies who get more breast milk have fewer very serious morbidities like necrotizing enterocolitis or retinopathy of prematurity. You might have heard of the famous musician Stevie Wonder, who's blind. He's blind because of what is called retinopathy of prematurity. There's only one known cause, prematurity, and there's only one known cure, mother's breast milk. It's also proven that babies who get more breast milk go home sooner because the mom's body tailors her breast milk for the unique requirements of her baby's growth. Unfortunately, the entire process of breast milk management at a neonatal ICU or at a NICU is horribly broken. First, moms have to pump at home while they are physically separated. And this greatly affects her pumping outcomes because she cannot see the baby, she cannot smell her baby, she cannot hear the baby cry. She's not getting any of the stimuli that a mom needs to lactate. She also has to do this 8 times per day. So that generally, the outcome is that she produces anywhere from 16 to 24 bottles per day. Then these bottles are delivered by the mom or the dad or the grandparents to the NICU, where nurses spend a ridiculous amount of time just managing breast milk. It is an extremely manual process that has several steps from receiving breast milk to thawing it, to freezing it, to combining it, splitting it, adding vitamins to it, feeding the baby. And it is taking them upwards of 13,000 nursing hours. Plus, because it is so manual, it has manual errors, like feeding expired milk to the baby or feeding somebody else's milk, which is considered a seminal sin. It is like you had to amputate the left leg and you amputated the right leg. It is as serious as that. The reason is breast milk is like blood. It is a bodily fluid after all, and it has the same risks of transference of HIV, hepatitis, and so on and so forth. And finally, lactation consultants in the hospital who are tasked with helping moms lactate and keep them on track to continue pumping, they have no idea how well a mom is pumping. So it's all very scary. It sounds scary, right? Because you don't know whose milk your baby is drinking. So we decided to fix it. And our secret sauce was a pre-printed barcoded label that would be given to the moms when they go home after delivery. Moms would pump at home, attach this label on the milk bottle, and then using the mom app, they would scan the label and start the process of data entry right at home. This was the first time any such solution was being developed. Next, when these bottles would come to the hospital, we created a nurse app where we automated every single step from receiving to expiration management to discharge of the bottles, feeding the baby. We completely eliminated what is called a two-nurse check process, where two nurses had to come together to make sure all the bottles were correct. Excuse me. We completely eliminated that. We then provided a way for lactation consultants to remotely keep track of a mom's pumping and the ability to chat with the mom. And finally, we digitally bridged the gap between mom and her baby through photo sharing. So think of something like Instagram for NICUs. Now, how did I get into this most bizarre yet wonderful business of breast milk management? Like I said, I had seen the problem statement when my sister delivered my nephew, and my nephew had to be in the NICU for about 3 weeks. But when I was studying at University of Pennsylvania in 2015, I was pursuing my second master's in robotics. Penn holds the world's largest hackathon called Penn Apps. And a couple of nurses from the hospital of the University of Pennsylvania, they came to the hackathon and posed a problem asking, can somebody help us create a dashboard to track a mom's pumping supply from the data that is generated by an archaic tool that we have? And that was it. That was the original problem statement. They wanted to build a dashboard to track a mom's pumping supply. I was sitting in the audience as a student. I went up to them and I told them, hey, I just joined Penn from SAP. And at SAP, I was building a dashboarding tool fortuitously. And I've also had a nephew in the NICU, so I'm kind of aware of the problem. I would love to help you out. And that's how it started. During the hackathon itself, we conducted a quick 45-minute design thinking session with the nurses. And we found out that their ask of building a dashboard, it was just a means to an end. The entire process of breast milk management was horribly broken. During the design thinking session, we learned that just to prepare half a day's feed for one baby by one nurse, they have multiple steps. First, they have to find the container for this baby. It could be in the fridge. If there is no milk in the fridge, then they have to go to the freezer and thaw it. So you have to figure out where the milk is. Then you have to combine 4 to 6 milk bottles. Then you have to split those bottles into smaller syringes from which babies will be fed. And finally, you have to make sure the right baby gets fed the right syringe. But if you just focus here on the combining aspect, so let's say I have to combine 4 to 6 milk bottles for one baby, I have to check, 2 nurses have to check that each bottle belongs to the same mother, that none of them are expired, each has the same level of fortification, which is vitamin A or B or whatever has been added, that's called fortification. Everything should be on the same caloric value. And then you have to calculate what is the minimum expiration of this combined based on the minimum expiration of the individual bottles that you combine. It is not rocket science. It is a fairly straightforward process. But when alarms are going off in the NICU, nurses don't want to be mixing breast milk. They want to be taking care of the babies. And also notice we haven't discussed how it is received, how it is discharged. It's a whole big messy process. No wonder it was taking them 6.5 full-time nursing employees who were just quote unquote bartending and mixing cocktails, as they call it. And they were basically spending time away from patient care. So this was right up my alley. I love to build automation for process orchestration problems. And we decided that this was going to be our hackathon project. So we started with the holy trifecta of prioritization, which is called requirements, resources, and time. These are the only 3 knobs that you can actually control in any project delivery, whether it's a software project, a hardware project, anything. So we were a team of 3 in the hackathon, and we went to the drawing board and figured, what could we do? We took stock of the requirements. This is the things that we had learned that, hey, there's a first in, first out inventory. There are workflows and rules, expiration reminders for the bottles. We learned during our 45-minute design thinking that nurses want this process to be hands-free. Currently, they were using some sort of a barcode scanner. They wanted lactation analytics, the ability to connect the mom and the baby, so on and so forth, right? But we were only 3 developers, and we had about 30 hours in the hackathon. So we divided the different tasks into buckets, and we mostly did this by gut. But we needed a way to figure out which out of these buckets are we going to be able to develop and deliver within the time frame of this hackathon. So we did the simplest prioritization exercise, which is called Moscow. So this is the first of the 3 frameworks that I'm going to discuss today. So what's Moscow? Moscow stands for must do, should do, could do, and won't do. Basically, you divide your swim lanes, and we had set ourselves a goal that in the next 30 hours, we want to showcase to our nurses what's possible if technology is utilized the right way. That was our goal. We just wanted to wow our nurses. So we divided, like I said, we divided them into different buckets, and we mostly did this by gut. We did not have the time to go deep into any of these to understand, hey, how do you really manage inventory? How do you decide which bottles to pick? So we didn't really understand how big each of these problems were or the why behind it, but we knew there were some problems, right? Now, one of the biggest risks with using Moscow is that it is difficult to calibrate what is important. And the loudest voice in the room can actually win. For example, if there is an important stakeholder and they say, hey, FIFO inventory is more important than lactation analytics, there is no basis of it. Moscow is a very simple tool for. Okay, so for the purposes of a hackathon, this worked for us. We created a 2-part solution. We first created a hardware sleeve for the milk bottle. So whenever milk was poured, it would automatically calculate how much milk was in there, and it would update the systems and the database. And second, we created an app where nurses could share photos and moms could see the photos. Nurses could also do their workflow steps. It was super scrappy. We did everything in 30 hours without sleeping, 3 of us, but it worked. We won second prize, and we were judged by Kevin Hale, who is a Y Combinator partner, and Y Combinator is the world's most successful accelerator. And beyond winning the hackathon, what was more important to us was that our users were absolutely ecstatic. They got really excited by the fact that a couple of students from Penn Engineering built something. They won the hackathon. There is a chance that this could become a productionized solution for them. And in the next 30 days, I was still a student. I was in my 2nd semester out of my 4 semesters, 2 years course. I was in my 2nd semester. In the next 30 days, I decided to launch this as a formal company. I raised my first $100,000 while still studying. And I knew that we had barely scratched the surface of what's ahead of us. And it was a truly long road ahead.
It is. I'm extremely proud of you, what you have done.
Thank you.
Really, I had this goosebumps. Extremely proud of you. Very good. Very good.
Thank you, Dr. Agarwal. Thank you. Okay, so jumping back to now my framework, we knew that our first order of business was diving deep into the requirements and diving deep into the world of NICU and breast milk management to understand what the process is, what are the constraints. I really wanted to understand what the customer pain points were, right? So we started by conducting design thinking sessions with our nurses, lactation consultants, and the nurse managers. This is an actual photo of the design thinking session, an actual output of the design thinking sessions. I used to call them chronicles of the ICN. ICN stands for intensive care nursery. It's another word for NICU. This, along with shadowing the nurses. So I was in the NICU at 4 in the morning. I was in the NICU at 3 in the afternoon. I would shadow the nurses, the lactation consultants. I would observe them when they were mixing breast milk. I would observe them when they were talking to moms. This helped me in understanding even the most arcane problem statements. For example, I'll tell you one. How do you handle multiples from a mom, like if she has twins or triplets? So if the twins and triplets are on the same fortification level, you can feed them from the same bottle. But if they're on different fortification level, let's say one baby has more caloric need than the other baby, then you cannot feed them from the same bottle, even if it's the same mother's breast milk. This single requirement to handle multiple babies like twins and triplets shaped the entire software architecture of Keratin, which eventually resulted in a 60-page patent. By the end of it all, they had given me a special desk in the freezer room where I would compile my notes and eventually also ended up coding there. But beyond the nursing staff, we also surveyed about 300 moms. Different moms shared different pain points, but every single mom told us that remembering to pump 8 times a day was the hardest. This no single nurse had shared with us, because nurses, of course, could not know how difficult it is for a mom, right? So I sat down with the nurses, I sat down with the moms. I also studied about 500 pages of research to understand the problem statement further. And needless to say, I now know more about breast milk than I would have ever known in my life. Okay, so just to help you appreciate the context a little bit more, this is a state machine of a breast milk bottle, which can stay at home or can be in the NICU, in the unit. It is pumped at home, it can be refrigerated, frozen, or thawed, then it is sent to the hospital, where again it can go through multiple stages of being refrigerated, frozen, or thawed. It can be fed, it can be discharged. Every single step or multiple of these steps changes the expiration of the breast milk. Remember, everything was being done handwritten. Earlier, before we introduced our solution, everything was handwritten on the bottle. Whose milk is it? What is the expiration? If the expiration changes, then they would put another label on it, so on and so forth. So that's how they were doing it. Okay, so moving on, the reason to conduct these sessions with our users was also to figure out the why. Like, why go through this entire process of breast milk management? And that is the reason I wanted to understand that the why was because I wanted to identify what would be the North Star of this company, of the work that we are doing. And for that, we had to tap into the emotions. There is a famous example where they say that to solve slow elevators, you install mirrors and not faster motors, because the true problem is that the wait time is boring. So while the nurses spoke about the process challenges, right? 2 nurse checks are slow, reprinting, barcoding, the scanner in one hand, giving baby the wrong milk. But their main motivation was to get back to being nurses. They said, we don't want to be bartending, we want to be nursing and not waste time mixing milk, right? So this was super critical when we defined our goals as a company for our product. So for our nurses, now how does this translate to product goals? For our nurses, we wanted our nurses to come to our app, do their things, and get out. So juxtapose that to Netflix or Facebook or Instagram. They want you to spend all their time on their apps. Our goal was the lesser the amount of time nurses spend on our app, the better, right? So how little of our apps do the nurses use? That became one of our goals. Same with lactation consultants. There is one lactation consultant in the NICU for 30 beds. So for 30 moms, there is one LC. And that LC has to keep track of every mom. Is she continuing to pump? Has she stopped? Does she have mastitis? Things like those. And they needed timely access to information. And for our moms, we identified that it was a guilt problem. They felt that they were not doing enough for their babies. But as we connected the dots, we realized, again, everything is a means to the end so that babies get more breast milk. When we kept asking the 5 whys, right? It's an exercise where you ask a question, then you ask why. You keep on asking why until you get to the be-all, end-all. And for us, the be-all, end-all was the same thing as I spoke about at the start, that breast milk is liquid gold. Babies who get more breast milk, they are healthier, they are smarter in their later lives, and they are discharged sooner from the hospital. And this is how we figure out our North Star. We wanted to complete the process of breast milk management without any errors as quickly as possible and help moms improve their pumping outcomes. Okay, so finally, armed with all this knowledge, we were able to come up with our napkin version of what is called a flywheel. A flywheel is essentially a way to deliver value to your customers so that it automatically drives more of your business. I'll give you an example for Amazon. At Amazon, our flywheel is that we provide the lowest and most competitive prices. That is appealing to those products are appealing to our customers, right? So we get more customers, which propels more third-party sellers and brands to want to sell their products on Amazon. So driving lower prices gets more customer, gets more suppliers, which also gets us better selection and consequently lower prices. So that's what is called a flywheel. In Keratin's case, we wanted to start by automating the breast milk management, which would generate enough data for us to enable lactation analytics. And those insights, along with photo sharing and the ability to chat with these moms, by the way, These are millennial moms. You call them, nobody picks up. You text them, they'll text you back in 2 minutes. Okay. So we wanted to improve the mom's engagement, which would result in happier moms, or at least moms who are able to see their babies, which would result in improved pumping outcomes, which would increase the workload at the NICU, which requires an automated breast milk management system, right? So all of that working backwards, all of that figuring out the North Star, everything helped us figure out our flywheel. But as you'll notice, we haven't discussed our framework for a while, the prioritization framework after Moscow. This is because these inputs to prioritization are just as critical to get right. And our final task was figuring out what metrics we will track to justify the success or failure of our platform. In product management, there are some typical metrics which are called AARRR, which is activation, acquisition, referral, revenue, so on. And everybody has those. But then you have to have some product metrics which are specific to your domain. So for us at Keratin, we had some short-term metrics, of course, like time spent on milk management, number of feeds, number of errors, so on and so forth. But we also had some long-term metrics like that would materialize over several months, like baby's length of stay, right? So moving on, we went back to the drawing board, but this time our list of requirements was way longer and much better refined. At this point, I had dropped out of University of Pennsylvania. I had raised $1 million in our seed round, and we had 2 full-time developers working with me. I was playing a 50% CTO role and 50% CEO role. So that meant we were 2.5 developers. We set ourselves a goal of delivering a proof of concept in 3 months. And then in another 3 months, we wanted to start our pilot. And yes, as is often the case, our requirements to developer ratio was pretty lopsided. So we needed to prioritize our build order. What will we build in each version and how will we launch it? So we looked at 2 lesser known but extremely effective frameworks called RISE and Systemico, of which Systemico is the least known. So what's RISE? It is basically a fancier cost value effort matrix, which I'm sure many of you might have used, but with an additional column for confidence. And this is what I love most about RISE. It promotes transparency on what areas need more research. That is what confidence is. So before we commit ourselves with code, before we started coding, we needed to calibrate each of the R, I, C, and E. And what do I mean by calibration? So for each of reach, impact, and confidence, you give a score from 0 to 10, where 0 means something and 10 means something. So how do you calibrate that? So I'll give you an example. In our case, we calibrated reach, and we would ballpark what percentage of our users or the target audience will this particular row or line item or feature, how many of our users is it going to impact, right? So if it would impact nurses, and for 30 kids, there are 300, 400, 500 nurses. So if a feature impacted nurses, we would score it 10, the highest, right? If anything was related to IT security, for example, HIPAA compliance, which is big in US, right? Patient data privacy laws. Anything related to IT security, we would also mark it as 10 on impact. So that is a way to collaborate, to calibrate your scoring. And that has to be very domain specific. You will have to understand, okay, what is my target audience? How can I get to X target audience or X percentage of target audience? And accordingly, you'll have to score or calibrate your reach. Similarly, for impact, everything that highly impacted the time spent on milk management or risk of errors, that was scored highly. And from there on, 10, 8, 6, 4, 2, that's how we scored it. Confidence was basically how well did we understand the problem. It was pretty qualitative and it depended on how much working backwards we had done with the customers. And effort was in developer weeks, like how many dev hours will it take for us to build something like this. So we fill out our numbers and we calculate the total by multiplying reach into impact into confidence and dividing by the effort. So just to dive deep, I'll show you an example. So look at photo sharing, for example, here. We knew the impact was high because lactation consultants in the hospital used to tell moms, hey, whenever you come to visit, take a couple of photos of your baby. When you are pumping at home, look at that baby's photo. They would also give mom the onesies of their baby so they could smell it at home. So we knew the impact of showing a mom a photo of her baby is high. It would help in lactation. But the problem was we did not understand how the workflow would be. Who will click the photo? Who will send the photo? How will the moms receive it? So on and so forth. So we kept the impact high, but we kept the confidence low. Okay. So based on this exercise, we had a certain priority order. So if I move on, you'll see all of my things got ordered. And we could have started coding at this point, right? But a flaw with any framework is that it is only as good as the inputs you provide. And one thing that RISE does not take into consideration are the real world constraints. So we at Keratin had two major constraints. First constraint was that nurses could not be trained again and again on different versions of the app. So let's say we launch something, then we train 300 nurses, then we launch a new feature. We could not keep retraining the nurses. So this basically means that we had to launch majority of the workflow stuff together, right? So as you're seeing here, the workflow stuff is split across this priority order. What I did was that I hand adjusted this. So I brought all of the workflow or your rules and HIPAA compliance, IT security stuff together, right? Another way to do it is that you can add a column for constraints, and you can also score that column, then take it into your calculation, and that will automatically take care of these things. I hand adjusted this. The next thing I looked at was North Star. Is it helping us meet our North Star? It was. And the second constraint that we had was, or the second constraint of the RISE framework is that it doesn't take into account your flywheel. For example, according to the priority right now, we should build chat counseling before lactation analytics. But that makes no business sense, because unless we enable the analytics, how will a lactation consultant know what to chat about? Correct? So again, you can add a column for your flywheel or business requirements or business priority. What I did was I just hand adjusted this. So this was finally our priority order, right? So far, so good. But if we had just stuck to RISE, this is how our product launch would have looked like. A first version where we would automate the process, this part, and these are some of the features, right? In the workflow, we would receive, discharge, we would automate all of this. Then a second version of the app or our product, where we would enable analytics and chat and all of its features. Then a third version for photo sharing and so on and so forth, right? And this approach is very common in software launches or product launches. But I want to go back to my cake analogy for a second. Now, imagine you go to a pastry shop or to a chef and you ask for a pastry, but the chef says, hey, you have the base crust today, then tomorrow you come back for the filling, and come back day after tomorrow for the frosting. That would be awful, right? But this behavior is widely accepted in software launches, and there's a reason for that. The reason is we are optimizing cost. We are managing cost, the cost to build. But guess what? Your customer does not care. The customer cares about value, not your cost to build. And this is where a framework like Systemico is really helpful. It comes really handy, so that teams don't lose sight of effectiveness while focusing on efficiency. So what is Systemico? Now, this is the third and the final framework that I'll share with you. It is again a metrics tool, but this time your columns are user goals. Okay, so remember, user goals, not user stories, not features, but a goal. What do I want to achieve with this product? What do my users want to achieve with this product? Those are your columns, okay? And then on your rows, there are 4 buckets. So there is a bucket for core, there's a bucket for use, there's a bucket for engage, and there's a bucket for explore. And I'll quickly explain to you what these buckets are. So core is the core functionality that satisfies the basic needs of the user, like login, logout, so on and so forth, right? Security stuff, being able to remember my password, things like those. So that is your core set of features or core set of user stories. The next bucket, use, is the bucket of features without which the product has minimal appeal to the user. So for example, in Amazon.com's case, it would be the ability to display products on a page and for a user to be able to add it to the cart and complete the shopping experience. That's my basic use case. In Instagram's case, that is my ability to share a photo, right? To post a photo. Those are your basic use cases. Next bucket is called engage. This is the functionality that draws the user to interact further with the product and return to the product in the future. So in Amazon's case, that would be providing reviews and ratings. And in Instagram's case, that would be the ability to like a photo or share a photo to your story, features like those. And the fourth bucket is called explore. This is the set of functionality that entices the user to go beyond simple interactions, and it helps to strengthen the connection between the user and the product. For example, in Amazon's case, when we suggest people, you might have seen this feature, people who bought this also bought that, right? So that feature is a way for you to explore Amazon and the catalog further. Okay. So I'll now take a hypothetical example. So say we have a hypothetical product where we have multiple user goals. Within those user goals, there are multiple user stories or features, right? The thing about Systemico is that, and it's beautiful, like that's the reason I love Systemico. You can prioritize user stories across different user goals, depending on the level of engagement that is important for that goal. Now, what do I mean by that? So you see multiple user goals, some have core features, some have core use and engage features, so on and so forth, right? But I don't need to do a version 1 launch for only core, then a version 2 launch for only use, a version 3 launch for only engage. What I can do with a framework like Systemico is that I can pick and choose from different user goals what will become a part of version 1 launch, what will become a part of version 2 launch, version 3 launch, so on and so forth. Okay, it might sound too complicated, right? Let me give you an example for how we did it for Keratin. So for Keratin, we identified our basic goals, login, security, of course, but then there were 3 big buckets of goals. One was that we wanted to reduce the error, correct? The second was we wanted to improve the outcomes. And third was we wanted to improve training for the nurses, right? We wanted to improve how the overall efficiency of the process. So in each of these buckets, we had line items, we had features. Login is obvious, login, logout, forgot password, touch ID, face ID, things like these. Look at reduce errors. This is the process optimization. There is FIFO inventory management, receive discharge, combine split, fortify, feed, empty, twin triplet handling. A way to explore this further is expiration notifications, so on and so forth. And similarly for improving outcomes. Now, how did we come up with our versioning? How did we get to finally launching this product, right? So before that, let me just give you one more example. So look at this bucket of patient engagement, right? Charting a mom's pumping pattern was an absolute necessity. This is a use or a basic use case of this user goal. But the ability to share photos is a way to engage further with the product, right? And automatically flagging a mom who's at the risk of stopping her pumping is a way to explore that feature further. So I hope this was clear. How do we split between use and engage and explore? Okay. So we had our first goal. We wanted to do a proof of concept launch in 3 months. So we identified what is important for that version. Notice I'm not even picking login, logout right now. We just have to do a proof of concept. I just want to show the nurses and the nurse management and the hospital CIOs and CXOs that this is how the product will function. I don't need to code login, logout. I just need to be able to show a demo, right? And we had to do it in 3 months. On the eve of Christmas of 2016, for the first time, we demoed Care Mom and Care Nurse apps to our hospital staff, which included end-to-end breast milk management and lactation analytics. So this was our first public demo of 2 apps with end-to-end automation. And if you notice carefully, the reason I'm hiding behind the nursing staff is because I was in my sweatpants after coding for about 30 hours and pulling an all-nighter. And it's true that my dual degree at JP has set me up for success in life. And
We
Our-
will definitely take this as, that you can see that our student is doing so much and you're doing wonderful work. Wonderful. And it's not easy what you have done.
Thank you so much, Doctor.
And
Appreciate it.
especially the area. We all say that what we can do, but there's so many things that we can do. And the thing that you are doing, and especially I know a lot about NICU, NICU also, and what are the challenges of NICU. This is really remarkable.
Thank you, ma'am. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, so our nurses loved that demo. This is a quote from the CIO of the hospital who said that when nurses will start using keratins, the heavens are going to open and angels will sing. So we knew that our nurses were very excited about the level of automation that we were going to introduce. By January of 2017, I closed our seed round. We were on track to launch our pilot in the next 3 months, and the first baby was about to come on the platform. So once again, we went back to our system econometrics. We had already coded all of the things that are here in green. All of this was done. We then looked at what were the most pressing and value-adding features we needed to add for our first launch. Now you will see that I pick up login, logout, HIPAA compliance, and the ability for the mom app to receive a photo. Okay. And we also built chat using a third-party service. That is all the time we had, but we were finally getting there. Okay, just a quick side note now. Launching a 0 to 1 product is truly exciting, but it was also a lot of work. So I wanted to share this extensive checklist with you folks that I have used over the years. It is available on Pinterest if you search for the ultimate product launch checklist. But don't worry, we'll find a way to get you this deck at the end of the session as well. So finally, on April 14th, 2017, we went live with 2 apps, Care Mom and Care Nurse. And within these 2 apps, we had 4 products for feeding management, lactation analytics, text chat, and photo sharing. We delivered an experience that none of our users had previously thought was possible. From the 20-year-old nurse to the 60-year-old nurse in the NICU, everybody was excited to try the app. And within a few months, all of our hard work started showing result. You remember those metrics we were discussing? We were killing it on all the fronts. We brought down expiration of breast milk by 50%, saved roughly $60,000 in just relabeling cost. Our moms were pumping more, about 40%, and our nurse satisfaction went up from 15 to 90+%. But more importantly, we caught about 120 errors. These hospitals used to tell us that we have 6 to 7 errors in 6 to 7 years. We were catching 10 to 15 errors every month. And while all of these were phenomenal numbers, there was something magical that was happening in the background. We figured that for each photo shown to a mom, she would pump about 72 mLs more milk, which is roughly 2.5 feeds for a baby. And we had a pretty significant p-value as well. So do you remember from the Systemico though, that I shared, or what we built was the ability for the mom's app to receive a photo, but there was no ability for the nurse app to send a photo. And that was intentional because our confidence was super low. We did not understand how nurses would send a photo. Will they even send a photo? They're already so busy. This is extra work for them, right? So we were not convinced to build the ability in the nurse app to send a photo. So how did we get to this stat? Well, this is where I used a lovely trick called fake the backend. What I would do is I would actually go to the hospital every day, click photos of the 5 babies who were on our system during the pilot. And throughout the day, I would keep sending their moms a couple of photos from our development console, from my dev console. And I would attach a cute quote to the photo like sleep, eat, poop, repeat, something like that. And our moms absolutely loved it. Imagine showing a mom her premature daughter's photo when she opened her eyes for the first time. My mobile phone number was a support telephone number in the app, and I would get calls from moms literally in tears, thanking us for building this app. And not just that, this helped us tremendously in getting a buy-in from the nurses. And in the next 2 sprints, we added the nurse workflow to click a photo and send it to the mom. Again, the conviction to do things like these it would have been impossible had we not done an extensive working backwards and prototyped our way through to production. Okay, last but not least, building long-term roadmaps as our customers understood. Yes, please.
Sir, was not it possible to share videos to mom?
So video would have been a lot of work for the nurses, and it was the nurses who were the primary person who were taking the photos. We eventually did add videos, but it took us some time to be able to get there.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Okay. As our customers understood the state of what is now possible, their expectations grew pretty quickly. Jeff Bezos had once said that yesterday's wow quickly becomes today's boring. So we were getting inundated with requests like automating donor milk management, which in of itself is a full-fledged workflow, integrating with their EMR system, and so on and so forth. But we were still a very small company. So there were two things that we did to manage our roadmap. The first was we wrote everything down. Every single feedback, whether it was from our customers or a salesperson or a test engineer, whether it was an idea, a moonshot, whether we understood 10% of it or 90% of it, it went into our backlog. We documented everything. The second thing that we did was that we divided the list into different sections and basically ran the RISE and Systemico process again. This is actually the process followed by a wonderful company called GitLab, which is a GitHub alternative. And I highly recommend their open source product and engineering handbooks. It is a wealth of information overall on these topics of how to prioritize, how to build, how to launch, what to launch. Overall, I would suggest that just be explicitly thoughtful about long-term plans, size your market, know where you are, move towards those long-term goals using short-term objectives. And these short-term objectives are your sub-goals, and they have their corresponding results, which are clear and unambiguous milestones. So where is Keratin today? Well, we recently did 3 million verified feeds and have caught 30,000 plus errors since launching it in 2017. The company is still running. I am not running it anymore. I work at Amazon, but we have a CEO and CTO and a full-fledged team of about 25 people who are continuing to run the company. But more importantly, or most importantly, we proved that our babies on our platform are going home 3 days sooner. Although we cannot take all the credit for this, given all of the advancements in NICU care, we would like to believe that we have played an important part in that journey. And for our work, not only have we won several awards, even our customers like Penn Medicine are winning awards for using our technology. And this is also the reason why I got my O1 visa and EB1 green card from US government. Okay, so that about wraps it up for me. I have put together a list of great reading materials for you all when you get access to this presentation. Let's do some Q&A.
Sir, could mom see the mood of the babies?
Could you repeat that question, please?
Could the mom see mood of the babies the whole day, maybe at the time of feeding or?
No, so it was not like a live camera that was integrated. We had iOS apps and the nurses had iOS phones like Apple devices. So whenever they would click photos of the babies, so the thing in the NICU is when for certain babies, right, if there's a feeding tube installed or if the baby is undergoing some procedure, you don't want parents to be able to see all of that. So
Yeah.
nurses would only click photos when it was okay, when the baby was not under duress and the baby was not going through a procedure, and that's why it was highly curated when the parents got the photos.
Yeah.
I have a question. May I?
Yes, please.
You just talked about seed funding, right?
Right.
And this is the concept which I always want to understand. So you move from seed funding to first level funding, second level funding. If you don't mind, can you please explain this concept of funding?
Sure. So typically, at least from where I launched it as a university student, my first grant came from the University of Pennsylvania. With that money, I was able to, it was a very small amount. It was like $7,500. But with that amount, I was able to register my company. I was able to get access to AWS resources like servers and so on. So that helped me kick it off the ground. The next thing that you do is you try for what is called pre-seed funding, which is essentially to be able to just build out your product, right? With each round of funding, you set some goals, and for each round of funding, the goals, as you would expect, they are increasingly harder. So with the first round of money that you get, which is called pre-seed money, it ranges anywhere from a few $100,000 to a few $1 million in some cases. With the pre-seed money, what you're trying to do is you're trying to get to building a product. So right now we are not worried about, is there product market fit, is there product user fit, things like those. All we are trying to do is we are trying to conduct research. We're trying to understand what the problem statement is, how big the problem statement is, can we build a product, should we build a product, do we build a product, and you try to build a product and launch it. So that's your pre-seed money. The next stage is seed stage. This is the stage where you're trying to launch the product and get your first 10 customers. So you go 0 to 1 and you go 1 to 10. So you launch the product with some marquee customers. And I am a B2B person. So I don't know how honestly, I don't know how B2C companies think about this, because direct to consumer or to consumer companies are very different. I am talking from the vantage point of how do we serve to businesses. So for businesses, what you try to do is you try to find a marquee customer, your key customer, your first customer. For me, it was Penn Medicine. Being a student at Penn, I worked with Penn Medicine, launched it there, did the pilots, gathered the data. My first contract came from Penn. So that was my marquee customer. And then with the seed money, I tried to do the first 10 launches. That is typically what you're trying to do. This again can range anywhere from $1 million to a few tens of millions of dollars, depending on how big the company is, what is the capital requirement. Each company looks very different, right? The next stage then becomes Series A, Series B, Series C. And in all of those, then it becomes about finding product market fit and scaling the company. And that, of course, goes from hundreds of millions of dollars to sometimes to some billions of dollars.
Series A, B, and C, it comes when the company is thinking of scalability, of finding new customers or increasing the customer base.
Absolutely. So you have at Series A, for example, you have some sense of product market fit. You've been able to sell it. You've been able to get revenue. People are ready to pay for your product. They're finding value. Now you are constrained by the fact that, oh, it's only the 5 of us who are eating ramen, who are sleeping in the office. We can't scale this company. We need to go from 5 resources to 50 resources. So that's where your Series A and B and C start coming in.
I was so inquisitive about this thing because I'm constantly following Zepto on LinkedIn.
Right.
So after every 2 months, they are putting up a message that we are on Series B funding. We have got Series C funding. So I think that's a scalability that they want to define over there, that we are getting bigger and bigger.
Correct. And typically in B2C companies like Zepto, that can happen very quickly if there's quick turnaround, right? I launch something and I go from 100 users to 1,000 users to 100,000 users to 1 million users. It can happen in 15 days, like what happened for Facebook or what happens with Zepto and Blinkit and companies like these. In B2B businesses, when you're selling to organizations, especially in healthcare, because healthcare is super slow. They are very slow to adopt innovation. For us, what can happen in 15 days in B2C, in B2B, it could take 5 years. It's that slow.
That's great. Thank you for this answer. Yeah. And we have 2 hands that we can see, so we'll take them one by one. Sure. First, I'll take up Dr. Rushali. Dr. Rushali, may please ask a question?
Yes, ma'am. Yeah. This is Dr. Rushali. I'm calling from Pune, sir. I'm actually teaching design thinking to my second-year students. And happy to see your lecture this way, real societal-based problem you have solved. So just wanted to know that the concept came into the action from the idea of the hackathon, right? So to implement it to the society, actually, based on the basis of the app, what was the total duration for this?
Sure. So we went from hackathon to pilot in about 12 months. And then from the pilot, it took us another 6 months to complete the pilot, show the results. And then we started.
So means by the way you completed your graduation, the project was out in the society, right?
So I did not complete my graduation. I dropped out. I have 2.5 degrees, 2 from JP and half a degree from University of Pennsylvania.
Yeah, it's okay. But wonderful job, society. So world is having a lot of problem statements to solve, right? Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Vidur. Thank you.
So Vidur, I even have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
I generally feel that entrepreneurship is something that is, it kicks you, right? You have built a product, then how did you go back to the corporate life? Why didn't you like always wanted to be like once an entrepreneur, always an entrepreneur? We've
No,
heard that saying, right? How did that shift back to the corporate life
sure
when
thing.
you were
So,
doing so good? Yeah.
yeah, no, absolutely. Great question. So I think I have two reasons. One is I've been very comfortable between running a company and then working at a big company. So I started my company when I was at JP, sold it, joined SAP, then did Keratin, then it is still running, and I joined Amazon. So one is I'm agnostic whether I'm doing my own thing. As long as I'm getting to do good product and engineering work, I'm okay. The second reason for leaving Keratin was that in about 3 years, one, I was working 18, 20 hours. I had 120-hour work weeks. So by the third year mark, I was absolutely burned out. There was that. Second, Keratin was at a place where product was stable, sales cycles were stable, or the sales process was stable. I had raised upwards of $1.5 million. I had sold upwards of $1 million. Now we got to that inflection point where it became about sustaining the sales cycles. And healthcare sales cycles in US are ridiculously long. It can take you anywhere from 18 to 24 months to close one account. And I am somebody who loves going from 0 to 1. I would go 0 to 1, I would do 1 to 10, but I'm typically not the person who enjoys scaling from 10 to 100. So I knew at that point that I was burned out. Two, I was losing interest in scaling it. So I brought in a veteran CEO, actually my COO. I promoted my COO to be a CEO. I found a CTO to replace my CTO side. And I raised another $500,000, gave it to the new CEO, and I stepped down.
Wow. Any new product that you're building?
So when I joined Amazon, I've built two products at Amazon. The first product was to automate transportation audits across the globe. So for example, the Amazon driver that comes to your house, whether that driver has a valid driving license, it used to be written in some Excel sheet in Amazon. So there were 300 such Excel sheets where all of this data was being stored. So I got all of that deprecated, and we moved into a cloud-based software as a service, like a SaaS solution. We launched that in 17 countries back in 2021. And since then, I've now moved into what is called Amazon Compensation, where my team builds products for managing $15 billion worth of compensation for all of our employees.
It's really great.
Thank
So
you.
we have a few more hands. We'll take them one by one. Professor Suri, you have a question?
Yeah, thank you, Nitima, once again for the opportunity. Vidur, first of all, let me compliment you, because taking such kind of project which takes everybody to women empowerment and, thinking about the women, which is, again, one of the very prime concern by United Nations. Every time in their, goals, they always mention about the well-being of mother and child. And I think it's a great contribution overall to the globe.
Thank you. Very kind of you. Thank you.
Monica ma'am, you'll get to meet Vidur on 21st. He's visiting campus.
Sure. I look forward, because I think I'm so happy to see, because I'm also, I'll not say join newly to this particular family of JIIT, but I think you have already made my expectations too high for day after tomorrow's meeting. Made me feel proud that I'm associated with the organization wherein they have such kind of alumni like you. Very rarely seen. So Vidur, I have two quick questions from you. The first one is it is related to technical process that you have gone through, right? From end-to-end solutions. So in such nature of projects, or in any kind of such hackathon projects or competitions, what do you think, how do you decide whether you have to go for reverse engineering approach from mom to child, or from child to mom? So I was just introspecting and reflecting on that factor from where you started, which was your starting point in terms of your reflection.
Sure.
And second big thing is because you were talking so much about, the entire process and initiatives. I want to know, was there any turning point for you from where you thought that, it's going different way, the way we thought of, because it happens in most of the startups and such kind of hackathons, wherein you reach 90% to the last stage of the project, and then you realize that there's something went wrong in any of the process, and then you come back to that particular problem. So that's my question. Yeah.
Sure. So I'll answer both. I have answers for both of those. So first, how do you decide what to build, how to build it, right? And as one of our other professors said, right, she teaches design thinking. I learned design thinking when I was working at SAP. And one of the pioneers of design thinking, he was the chief design officer at SAP. And when I was a fellow, I got to work in one of his teams. So when we did our design thinking with the nurses and the nurse managers and the lactation consultants, one of the first things I typically try to do is I map out what is the current process. And as part of mapping out the current process, in their case, for example, everything was hand labeled. They were using some archaic handheld barcode scanners that UPS and FedEx or delivery drivers use. That kind of technology was being used. So I end-to-end mapped. So in one of my sessions, I end-to-end mapped the process. In my next session, I do what is called a roses, buds, and thorns exercise. So roses, so we create 3 columns, and we basically will place a big chart, and everybody's sitting, and I'm talking to them, and everybody's given Post-its. And we create 3 columns: roses, buds, and thorns. Roses are things that you like about the current process. And even in a process that they were frustrated with, there were things that they liked, right? So those are things that you want to preserve in the new experience, or preserve something similar to that experience in your new experience also. Next is, so roses, buds. Buds are areas of opportunity, right? Where they feel, oh, why do we do 5 steps here? Why don't we do it in 2 steps or in 1 step? Things like those. Again, this is a very collaborative session with your end users, not nursing managers, not your chief nursing officer, but the nurses, the NICU nurses who are going to use the product. So roses, buds, and the last is thorns. Now, thorns are things that they absolutely hate about the process. Whatever they're doing today, what do they hate? When I understood, okay, this is the current process, this is what they love, this is what they hate, this is where the opportunity to innovate. From there, I then took stock of what can a new solution be. And this is where I love running solutioning sessions, both with the dev team, my developers, and with the customers. So as part of design thinking, we are trying to figure out 3 things, right? One is desirability, one is feasibility, one is viability. Desirability is, if I build this feature or if I build this product, is it desired by the user, right? I can build whatever, but if the end user doesn't use it, what is the point? Second is feasibility. Is it technically feasible, right? For example, things that are happening with ChatGPT now, they were not possible in 2016. So if I had thought of something which needed something like a large language model, it was not feasible in 2016, but it is feasible now. And the third is viability. If I build this, will I be able to build a viable business around it? If it is taking me $100,000 to build it for one hospital, but the hospital can only pay you $10,000, it's not a viable business, right? So all of that, mapping the current process, roses, buds, and thorns, the desirability, viability, feasibility analysis, all of that went into answering what will be the solution. Does that answer your question?
May God bless you, and you should keep coming with such kind of, social projects. And I think I'm proud of you. I'll really meet you and see you soon. Yeah, thank you.
Looking forward to it. And you had a second question that did something go wrong? Or was there a point at which we were 90% there? So there was a previous question, how long did it take us to build? And I said it took us 12 months to launch the pilot.
Yeah.
Actually, it only took us 4 months to launch the pilot. But the first 8 months, we built something that did not turn out to be viable. We stopped the production. I turned around the company. I raised new money, and then I launched this product. So the first 8 months, what were we doing? If you remember from my presentation, I said a couple of times that nurses really wanted the process to be hands-free. They didn't want to use a barcode scanner. But in our solution, they had to use a nurse app, which was on an iPhone. In the first 8 months, we created a hardware solution. So my company at the start, for the first 8 months, we were a hardware plus software solution. So I had set up a hardware lab. We were trying to build a hardware that would let them do the process hands-free. They could just keep the bottle on it. We were trying those things. Eventually, we realized it would not be a viable business for us to scale it and build it into a business. We went back to the nurses with another solution, where they still needed to keep something in their hand, a device, but the device, because it was doing so much for them, they did not mind it. So for the first 8 months, we built something wrong. We spent almost all of the $100,000. On my 26th birthday, I had minus $60 in my bank account after paying my employees. I was sleeping on my friend's couch, and then I raised $1 million.
That's wonderful.
Thank you so much, Vidur. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
So every one of us should try to have negative balance in our account, then only we can do something. Yeah, right. So we have another question from Dr. Krishna Rajan, and then we'll take question of Dr. Soren Sakas.
Sure.
Sir, good evening, sir.
Good evening, sir.
It was a wonderful session. It was a fabulous session.
Thank you.
I'm very keen to ask this question because my first job was pharma. And I would like to ask a general question. What made you to take this confidence or a brave step to take this startup? Because there are many startups. I've worked in bank, I've worked in education, I've worked in pharma. But I don't know, I'm sure you're from management background as far as I can understand. What made you take this step to start this type of startup, which is really very sensitive to handle the situation?
Thank you.
My first question, sir.
Yeah, great question. I think it was the excitement from the nurses when they saw what we presented in the hackathon. There was a general buzz in the NICU. We got called by the chief nursing officer and the NICU manager to present our hackathon project. There was a general sense of excitement. It's a couple of things. So one was that. Second, I think it fell very squarely in what I am good at, what my forte is, B2B process orchestration. I've built products like these across domains, and at the end of the day, NICU breast milk management is a process orchestration problem. So second was that. And third, I think the blessing from University of Pennsylvania, studying at an Ivy League, all of the academia is same, but just the clout that you have from studying at a university like Pennsylvania, we had access to millions of dollars on campus. The accelerator that my company went through was on campus and gave us the first money. So I think it was just the ease of doing business. And that is, I think, how I got started. Also, thank you. Also, I think the hubris of youth that you can do anything. I think it was also that.
Sir, last two small questions are there. Nidima madam, one is small two questions I would like to ask. How can you build this team, great team? What was the confidence made you to build such a great team to make this success? Because getting stakeholders is very difficult nowadays who are trustworthy and handling such type of products and services. Sir.
True. No, that is true. Building a team, I think. Okay, I'll before I answer that, I'll tell you something. I was pursuing my MBA in HR when I was at JP. And one of the reasons I did it was because I was a techie and I just wanted to get done with my MBA. So HR was the easiest. But honest to God, hiring people is the hardest. And my MBA in HR came very handy for real. To build a great team, I hired one of my former developers from SAP days. So he was a colleague and friend. He joined me. Another one of my friend's company, I hired his CTO to be my head of engineering. So within my network, I hired the first couple of engineers. It is very hard to find engineers for such a small niche problem, right? Like how many people want to solve breast milk management, right? So it was definitely hard, but I think, again, my MBA in HR came handy.
And very good. So last small question. You said during the interaction, my first public demo was and Santa came bearing gifts. Again, the Santa is coming this December 25th, which is close next week, not even next week. So we as a team from our JIIT team, we wish you all the very best in the endeavors in Santa as well as New Year coming up and take for this. We want to have a lot of startup from you and guide us, sir. Yeah.
Thank you. You're very kind. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Good evening, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Vidur. And you make me proud again that I'm HR faculty.
Thank you.
At the end of the day, we taught you how to do the right hiring. Okay.
Totally.
Okay. So we'll take another question of Dr. Soren Saka. Sir, you may please ask a question.
Sure.
Very good evening, Vidur.
Good evening, sir.
It is something beyond wow. The first thing I should praise you a lot that you have a great smile.
Oh, thank you. You're very kind.
After a whole lot of hectic day, when we come across a smiling face like you, it eases my stress like anything.
Thank you, doctor.
It's not a question. It is not a question. It's just inquisitive I want to ask.
Sure.
During the hackathon period, nurses were involved in your team.
as a stakeholder. So it was
As
three
yeah.
developers, but
Three developers.
we were constantly in touch with the nurses. Yes.
Where these nurses or any one of them were also a part of the team when your project went down to in a commercialization state?
Yes. So throughout the time we were building it, we were, like I said, I had a desk in their freezer room. So I had constant access to nurses and lactation consultants. But when we did commercialize, like after the pilot, we actually hired one of the nurses that you saw in the photo. She left her nursing job and she joined my company as our nursing advisor or medical advisor. So yes, we did have them on our on as a part of our core team.
That means you compelled her to be another entrepreneur.
True, yes. And she was also very excited because she had been such a core, like she was part of that core coterie of users who actually helped us build it. So yeah.
So nice of you. God bless you. God bless you.
That's really great. We have one more question for you, Vidur, because somebody has just messaged. Shikhar Sharma. Please elaborate on biggest challenges in prototyping for healthcare industry and how can they be mitigated?
Sure. In prototyping, I think first is access to the problem statement and the users, right? In healthcare, as consumers of healthcare, we might feel certain things. I think I got really lucky there with the involvement of Penn Medicine and being at Penn that I had access to the people who were going through the problem statement. NICUs are a very sensitive area. They don't let anyone inside the NICU. But I could go in, I could observe the nurses when the shifts were changing, how are they taking care of the babies and the milk and everything. I could talk to neonatologists, I could talk to nurse managers, to the chief nursing officer. So I think one of the biggest risks there is not having access to people who have the problem, to understand the problem statement in depth, right? Way to mitigate it is you find your one marquee customer. That's what I've learned in B2B products or B2B businesses. You find your first couple of marquee customers who have this problem. You validate the problem with them. What I did to validate further was I cold called about 50 other NICUs, from NICUs in India to NICUs in New Zealand to NICUs all across North America. I would just pick up the phone. I would call a nurse manager, chief nursing officer. I would tell them that, hey, this is what we are doing. Do you have a similar problem? Across my 50 phone calls, I think 45 of them would have said yes. The 5 that probably said no were saying we are too small a NICU. We have 5 beds, so we don't face this challenge and so on and so forth. But that is how I mitigated. 1, by working with a marquee customer, and 2, by validating it further, not in as much depth, but at least getting a general sense of validation that, yes, this is a problem. I think the second challenge in healthcare is it's not particularly a prototyping challenge. It's a survival challenge. Even if you raise $1 million, doing $1 million in a different industry versus doing in health, versus surviving in healthcare with $1 million is 2 separate ball games. In healthcare, the first year you spend in just piloting it because no hospital wants to try untested technology, right? Patient lives are at stake. Patient information is at stake. Their systems are very old. They're running Windows 95 in some cases. So you have to integrate with those systems. So they want to make sure that you have tested it out. But how do you test it out? If everybody's telling you that we want a product that is tested, how do you test it? So again, you go to your marquee customers. You work very closely with them. I was working with 35 stakeholders at Penn Medicine, from their ITIS officers to their project managers to their CNOs to CROs, revenue officers, 35 stakeholders in Penn for my first year. That's all I did.
Wow. Yes, in healthcare, people, if they don't trust you, if your product is not tested,
True.
they will not come, they will not buy up, they will not even listen to you.
In fact, Nidima, I was just searching across, the problem that he has solved is not something that is only limited to that area. It's a global problem.
Global problem.
Right. And I think what has been done in Indian markets or in smaller markets is these formula milks are taken over. They're the first feed. And I think doctors get commissioned to give the babies in NICU the formula feed and not take that pain of, letting mother express and give that milk to the baby.
And in fact, nowadays, what I see that in India, NICU has become as an option of coming up with more and more profits. Put the baby in NICU, keep them for 4 or 5 days, charge heavily. So that's a new thing that I can see in the hospitality industry, whatever this healthcare.
First thing, Vidur, I was thinking was, why not in India? Why can't we have such an app in India? But then I thought, the biggest hindrance that Indian market would have is from the hospital itself. That we have a tie-up with the product, and that's more profitable to us.
That is true. And one other thing, we did this. I had a couple of conversations with Indian neonatologists and Indian NICUs, and we also had a lactation consultant who was consulting for us. We found out that in India, one, the laws are not there, right? If you feed the wrong mom's breast milk, it is not such a big issue. So one, the regulatory constraints are not there. Second, at least forget tier 1 cities, forget big hospitals like Cloud9 or whatever that hospital is in NCR region, right? Forget big maternity systems, but in a tier 2, tier 3 villages, moms are sitting outside the NICU. They don't go home. If they need to feed the baby, they will ask the mom to come in, feed the baby. Moms will then go out and sit outside the room or outside the neonatal ICU. So this problem, the process problem, as it pertains to US, their nurses are also more expensive. There's a shortage of nurses. So nursing time is more valuable. It's a bigger process problem there than it is a process problem here.
But what a thought.
Thank
you. You lit that bulb so so bright that, yes.
We have a question from Dr. Logesh. Dr. Logesh, do you have a question? Because you have raised the hand.
Yes, madam. Am I audible,
sir.
madam?
Yes, sir, you're audible.
First of all, I would like to thank for giving such a wonderful session. And my question is here. Generally, how much time taken from idea to your prototype, and from prototype to a complete product?
Sure.
The time duration.
Sure. No, great question. So the first set of prototypes that we showed them were, of course, UI UX prototypes. So we used an app called Sketch. Now there's an app called Figma. There are multiple such apps where you can just design the UI UX. These are clickable prototypes. So you can at least show them that, hey, this is what an experience is going to look like. You can get early feedback. You can work with your stakeholders and customers and ask them, okay, does this make sense? Blah, blah, blah. So we did that. We just did UI UX prototypes. And even before the and there are two types of UI UX prototypes. There is a low fidelity UI UX, which is basically just hand drawn. This is a button. This is a list of babies. Select a baby. This is what will happen. Those are literally hand drawn, very crude, very low fidelity, as they're called lo-fi mockups. In the next set, you go to high fidelity mockups. So now my button will look rounded. My button is purple. My button is pink. This is how will I delete a milk bottle? How will I add a milk bottle? All of that experience then gets taken care of in what is called high fidelity or hi-fi mockups. So we did those. We did UI UX mockups, and then we prototyped an actual app on the iPhone to them, and then we went to pilot. So it takes anywhere from a few weeks to a couple of months for UI UX prototypes. We kind of skipped that phase by implementing some of it directly in code and being able to show it, because again, we were 3 developers. I was doing a lot of UI UX in one of these apps, Sketch, but also because I'm a developer, so I was able to directly take it to code and work with my developers very quickly, which was advantageous to have a small team. In bigger teams, there is more cost of communication. But couple of weeks to couple of months for UI UX prototyping, couple of months for actual proof of concept. But again, depends on how big the problem is, how much of that big problem you are solving.
Vidur, just in 2 lines, can you explain this UI UX? It's very much in the market nowadays.
Sure. So
yes.
Okay. So user interaction and user experience, right? These are 2 separate things. User interface and user experience. Sorry. So user interface is what you see on the screen, right? Do I have rounded buttons? Do I have square buttons? What is my how does my list look like, right? Where is a delete button? Is there text below a button or not? Is it just an icon? These are all your user interface things. But then there is user experience. What happens if I press delete, right? I can directly delete something and then show you an undo button, or I can press delete and ask you a confirmation. Do you want to really delete this, right? That is a UX decision. So that's the difference between a UI and UX. UI is what you see, But UX is what is the experience when I press something, when I go from one screen to another, how do I come back, what states get retained, things like those.
Oh, that's really great. Because nowadays, I do remember that somebody has told me, okay, go to this website and just tell us, give us your feedback, whether you're happy about this, and we'll be giving you money.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Just share your experience. They have given me a form and we'll be giving you money and you can do it on daily basis.
Okay.
So I was like very happy. मैं कहा चलो देखकर करते तो हैं कि क्या है. So
It is a scam. That's a scam.
No, that was not a scam. So I asked my 5 students from MBA only, you do it. And they started getting around 2,000 rupees per week.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's
So they were very happy. That time I was with Symbiosis. I do remember. I was doing it.
awesome.
They were doing it actually.
Share the link of that, na, so that we also should earn actually.
Ma'am, there is a company, UX Army or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was a company. I do remember.
I think we have one more question from Dr. Rani. What is the role of mothers played in giving you the inputs while developing prototype? So, ma'am, it was very important for us to talk to mothers because you will not believe, before Keratin came about, there were a couple of companies called Timeless and Safe Baby. And none of these companies started the process at the mom. We were the first company that started the process at the mom. The person who is pumping the milk, who is giving the milk to the baby, nobody included that person or persona in the process. Everybody started, all of our competitors, and these are old competitors. If you look at their apps or solution, it looks like it was created in 1990s, which is okay because, again, healthcare innovation is slow. But we were the first ones to start the process at the mom. Everybody else started the process at the nurse when the milk came to the hospital. So if we had not spoken to the mom, we would have made the same mistake. We would have started the process at the hospital, and it would not be what is called end-to-end automated. We automated right from the time it was pumped. We could track the expiration, where the milk is it at home, is it at hospital? Because imagine mom has pumped it at home, but there is not enough milk at the hospital. But now in our solution, we knew that there is milk at home. Nurses could see that there is milk at home. They could ping the mom and ask them to bring it to the hospital. Otherwise, they would have had to give formula. The problem with formula is babies' intestines, especially premature babies or babies in the NICU, their intestines they haven't developed and they get ruptured in what is called necrotizing enterocolitis. And that's why we want to maximize the feeds for mother's breast milk. So again, had we not spoken to moms, we would not have end-to-end automated it.
Oh my God. There is so much to learn from you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, any other questions before we end this session?
We have one more which says that please elaborate on the biggest challenges in prototyping for the health industry and how can they be? I think we've taken it. Yeah? Yeah.
We have taken this. So I can't see any more questions over here. Just a second. Yes. Have you observed some errors in the process? So this question was asked long back, 6:13. I'm sorry, we have missed it.
Have you observed some errors in the process? When we automated, yes, we observed that they were mixing or they were trying. So we don't call it an error, we call it a near miss, that we prevented the error. We observed nurses trying to mix 2 different mothers' breast milk. We observed them trying to feed expired milk or use expired milk during the combination process. We observed nurses mistakenly trying to give the wrong mom's breast milk to the baby. We observed them trying to discharge expired milk to the mom. We had 6 to 8 different types of errors, and we created an errors dashboard for the nursing management because in our research, they would tell us 6 to 7 errors in 6 to 7 years. We were finding 10 to 15 errors every month.
Wow. That's really great, Vidur, what you have done. And I think, as rightly said by Monica ma'am, so there are different sustainable development goals that are set up by United Nations, and we're definitely working for one such goal.
True.
So, right? Nitima, just one, if you allow me, I just want to understand from you, Vidur, like there are many NOCs and permissions specifically with respect to, medical associations we have to take up. So for this nature of sensitive project, as many of our dear, colleagues also asked you about the ethical and other aspects of it. So how did you take care of that? Permissions were granted on time, or I mean, which were the bodies which who actually authorized you to go ahead with this kind of project? Yeah.
True. So, ma'am, in US, only the hospital that is going to use your product, their IT and IS, so infrastructure, IT is information technology and IS is information security. Their IT IS teams have to approve it. What we did on our side was we were HIPAA compliant. So HIPAA is a sort of compliance in US, which you have to maintain if you are dealing with patient information. So to become HIPAA compliant, we did a couple of different things. There are 3 different things that you have to do. You have to get administrative controls, meaning you are able to delete the data, you are able to protect the data, so on and so forth. You have to have technical controls, which means our data at rest was encrypted, our data in motion. So when it's going from server to client, client to server, all of that data in motion was encrypted. Our servers were encrypted, our databases were encrypted. We had rotation of encryption keys. So like all of the techie things. So we took care of that. So administrative controls, you need technical controls, and then you need some sort of physical controls also. For example, in the office where I used to code and the systems that had access to the database, are those offices lockable or not? Like, I'm not even kidding. It is one of the requirements. So what we did was we made sure that we were meeting all the requirements. Then we created a document that we would share with the hospitals saying that, hey, this is the thing. These are all the things that we do. We also got audited. So there are multiple ISO audits that you can get done. So we got a couple of those audits done. We got a third party to do penetration testing, which is sort of, hey, can somebody break into our servers? All of that was required before we launched.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Vidur, we have to see the time as well. Otherwise, I have so many questions to ask. But 21st, keep talking to me because I have a list of questions.
Sure, ma'am.
And thank you once again for this very informative session. For last 6 sessions, yes, there were experts who have come, those who have talked about many different industries. They have given us example. But your example, the healthcare industry, and the type of product that you have developed is really remarkable.
Thank you.
I think this has also given us a new light to think about, a new direction to think, right? And thank you once again for such informative session, Vidur. Looking forward to have such more sessions with you.
Absolutely. It was absolutely my pleasure. Thank you all. I appreciate the time.
Yes.
Take
So
care.
can we all say bye to Vidur? We can
Thank
please
you so much, Vidur.
cameras.
Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it.
It was a pleasure listening to you.
Thank you. Thank you, ma'am. See you.
Thank you so much, Vidur. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year in advance.
Thank you. See you soon. Bye.
See you soon. Bye. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Nidima, we have Professor Singhal has also joined in.
Yes. Good evening, everyone. Welcome back for the 8th session, right, which is on IPR. And yesterday, few of us were having questions on patents and so many things. So we have Professor T.K. Singhal with us for this session. Sir, are you here?
Good evening, Professor Singhal. Can you hear us? Yeah, I think he's just setting up his mic.
Yes.
Yeah, am I audible?
Yes.
Sir. We can see you. We can't see you. We can see the background.
Okay, just give me a second.
Yes, sir.
I was just experimenting with the backgrounds.
No problem, sir.
Yeah, I think I should be visible now.
Yes, sir. Good evening, sir.
Welcome to this.
Good evening, everyone. Now I think we are set.
Now we are in that Christmas mode.
And Christmas mode. Yeah, that's what I wanted to emphasize, that it's festive time. Wish you all the best and great new year. Hopefully it will be greater than the one which we just left, which we are just leaving. I'm sorry. All
Good
right.
evening, sir. I'm Nituma Agrawal, coordinator of this FDP. with Dr. Ridhima Banosh Sharma, the co-coordinator of this FDP. And we have almost 113 participants right now all over India who have joined us for the session. And I'll ask Dr. Sharma to please introduce her.
Yes. So we have Professor Taran Kumar Singhal with us. He is working as a professor in the area of information technology at Fore School of Management, New Delhi. He's a seasoned academician with over 29 years of experience in teaching, research, consulting, and training and development. He's actively involved in delivering courses on blockchain, AI, business analytics, and IT. He's also serving as an assessor with the National Assessment and Accreditation Council, which is NAC India, as domain expert, and with the School of Vocational Education. He has also been associated with TIS, which is Tata Institute of Social Sciences, Mumbai, and also as an external member of the Department Research Committee of Amity International Business School. We are fortunate enough to have him because he has experience of conducting all these management programs and training programs of corporate executives within and even outside India. We are so glad, so grateful that you could spare that time with us, sir, and join us. And the stage is already set. We already had 6 sessions earlier. And there were so many questions which came in those sessions, which are piled up because we were waiting for you to join in. And the participants are all ready. I think as soon as you begin your presentation, there are so many questions that they already had in mind, which they need an answer to from you. Okay, the session is all yours. Thank you so much that you could spare this time. And I'm sure this would be a great learning for all of us.
Thank you so much. And I would try to live up to my gigantic profile and do justice. Hopefully, I'll be able to, ignite few thoughts with my presentation. Because when we talk about innovation and we talk about intellectual property protection, so they generally have a contradicting sense of view. But with my presentation, I'll try to examine if there can be a synergy where innovation can thrive and at the same time intellectual property protection is in place, so that the person who or the organization which has contributed so much in creating that innovation is able to protect and take the business interest forward. So I hope my presentation would leave with more questions than answers, because that is what professors are supposed to do. We are not supposed to provide all the answers, but to ignite more questions that the participants continue to explore. And that's how the journey of learning goes on and on. So with these words, I would like to share my slides. And
so before you are starting, there's I can see Dr. Palanival ES. He has already raised his hand. Sir, do you have a question before sir starts?
I think that was by mistake.
Yeah.
All right. I hope my screen is visible.
Yes,
sir, it's visible.
All right. Thank you so much.
So can you please change the slide so that we can see if it is changing?
Yes, it's working fine. So you can
all right. Thank you so much. So I'll just set the context. So when we talk about intellectual property for innovation, so there are 2 tenets of discussion which generally take place. So there are 2 ideologies. One is the Western part of the world ideologies, where they are good at creating innovations. And as soon as that innovation is there and it has been time tested and it has gone through the product market fit, the first idea that comes to their mind is that how to protect it, because they spend, let's say, billions of dollars in creating that innovation. Now they don't want this innovation to be made available to people because they had made a lot of investments in creating that innovation. So they generally take the route of protecting that using intellectual property, right? And they are right in some context, but when we look at the general context, there is an ethical side of dilemma which we generally tend to ignore. Can we deprive person who has not been exposed to that innovation, and can we put a premium for that person to pay and enjoy that innovation? So for the case context, let's say you have an electric car. So we can definitely credit the organization which probably spent millions or billions of dollars in creating that electric car. And when that car is actually made available to people, so the manufacturer or the innovator would try to put a premium on it. And that premium has to be paid by someone. So can there be a way where this innovation, which generally is credited to the innovator, be made available to general public so that we all get benefited by driving electric cars, by getting good quality of life through improved drugs, and maybe adopting better lifestyles, or maybe converting that planet into a livable planet? So these are the questions which generally are not answered. And the Western ideology is generally centered around protectionism, whereas the third world country aspect, they generally look forward to these innovations being made available to them at reasonable prices, which they can afford. So my presentation, I have divided it into two parts. One part is the traditional part, where we just going to have an understanding what kind of intellectual property mechanisms are there, how do we go about it. And the second part of my discussion would look at two aspects. One is the protectionist aspect, and second is the welfare aspect, in which these innovations were made available to people. And I would leave the audience with the thought process: what should be the midway? Should we protect the innovation, or should we make it available? Should we make it available to the general public? So with these words, I'll begin my presentation, and we'll start and look at the landscape of what intellectual property landscape looks like. So generally, we have divided it into number of categories or number of objectives that we wish to fulfill. So first, we will have an understanding what intellectual property is, how IP can actually foster innovation, and I will also try to touch upon the point how IP can curb innovation. And then we will try to examine different types of IP protection. And then there will be certain case studies where IP-driven innovations were made available, and what are the emerging trends. So these objectives I wish to cover, and why academicians should care about IP. So one is obviously research validation and recognition, because academicians are conducting a lot of research, so they would like to get recognition. Then there are certain funding and resource opportunities where people from different countries or same countries, they basically explore the funding opportunities, knowledge transfer and societal impact, career development, and then emerging research domains. So let's examine what exactly is intellectual property. So anything which is related to innovation, invention, literary artwork, designs, and even the images which we basically use in the commerce, they all fall under the ambit of intellectual property. So why creators would like to protect? Obviously, the first idea is to protect the original work. Let's say you write a story and you don't want to give rights to that story to any person. Probably you want to sell that story to a filmmaker, or if you have created some music, you want to sell that music to a music producer. The idea is that you have created something for which you would like to get rewarded. And in order to do that, you can encourage further creativity as well. Looking at the types of intellectual property, so we generally divide it into four categories. One is the patent. We will talk about it in detail. Copyright, trademark, and geographical indicator tag, or we call them GI tags. So let's understand what is covered under patent, what is under copyright, and so on and so forth. So generally, the inventions are covered under the patent, whereas the literary work, maybe writing stories, writing books, artistic work, maybe films, music, stories, that all fall under the copyright. The name, logo, slogan of a product or a service, that falls under the trademark. And the production of goods to a particular region, place, or country, that falls under the GI tag. I hope my speed is okay. If it is required, I can go a little slow, or if the speed is okay, then I'll continue with my usual speed.
Sir, it is perfect.
All right. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Because I just wanted to cover this traditional stuff a little early so that I can focus more on the case studies, which would basically trigger the thought process.
Sir, I'm able to
All right.
write
Thank you so much.
every word. It's a perfect speech.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So when we talk about the patent, so where I've already described that generally talks about an invention, and the inventor or the person who has created that invention, holds an exclusive right. The idea, the invention can be patented if it is new. That means it is different from the existing one, and it is useful, and it is not so obvious. Though there is fourth element in it, which can be considered as the mass production. So generally the patents which are related to innovations, they are eventually converted to some mass production. So there are plenty of examples. There are batteries, there are scientific formula, there are machines. These all fall under the patent and mass production regime. So the idea behind patents is that it generally tries to protect the new inventions and gives the exclusive right for a specific period, because patents are time bound, and it encourages technological innovation. The case being part is like Walmart recently patented the delivery system. So in the delivery system, they were looking at one particular idea where the shelf to consumer side, when the item has left the shelf, how soon it reaches the consumer and how soon the consumer is able to consume that particular product. So by doing so, they introduced a GPS-based mechanism. Through that GPS-based mechanism, they were able to backtrack it vis-a-vis the shelf life. So imagine a situation where a product has a shelf life of 10 hours and the product has already reached the shelf, and after the shelf, it has moved to the customer side. When the expiry of that particular shelf life is approaching, so there would be some mechanism from Walmart side which would intimate the customer that this particular product that you have purchased is now having this much shelf life limited. So kindly consume it before the shelf life expires and ignore if it has already been consumed. It was a simple, innovation, but it made a lot of difference, because it was reported in WHO report that sometimes the people who buyers who basically buy the stuff from the shelf or buy the stuff from the marts, they generally forget about consuming that particular product, and the shelf life has expired. The product is still lying in their homes. So in that context, the money that they invested or the money that they spent in buying the product has gone to waste. So it was simple, but it was a very encouraging technological innovation. Moving further, so we have already talked about that literary work, art, literature, music, all that falls under the copyright. So whenever you are performing some creative work, with that process, the copyright can be imposed. But there are certain disclaimers. So if you work with an organization, so whatever work you produce, whether it is music or literary work or story or anything else, that basically belongs to the company. However, when you work as a freelance, that means you are not affiliated to any organization, but you are just producing it for anyone. So you are working as a freelancer. You basically own the right, and you can't copyright an idea. The music videos or songs which you download, use it for your own purpose. It basically copyright infringement. And also you may sell or transfer the ownership of a copyright. However, you should have the moral right to the property, which is non-transferable. So you have seen number of cases where movies were reproduced with the same story. So the new producer had to buy the story from the old producer. That is basically the copyright. So we have already talked about it, covers most of the literary work, music, books, software, etc., and it forms a creative expression. So this is a thematic arrangement where you can look at literary, dramatics, artistic, cinematography, musical, sound recording, all that falls under the copyright. Moving further, the trademark you have already, so we have that kind of affinity. Whenever we see a particular logo, we are able to connect that with the organization. And that is how the trademarks become very significant. And we may not believe, but certain trademarks have been sold for thousands of crores or billions of dollars, because the value of those trademarks are so high. So if you just look at Adidas, you just recognize it. You see American Express, you just recognize it. Google is omnipresent. So whenever we see Google logo, almost everyone recognizes it. So basically, they try to attach some identity to brand, and they are associated to the organizations. And organizations basically hold the right over the trademark, and they are the ones who can enforce if there is any trademark violation. So you must have seen a few years back, there was a pizza outlet in India that was called Dom's Pizza. And I hope most of you would have heard about it, or at least you might have seen one or two stores in your neighborhood. So Dom's Pizza was sued by Domino's because Dom's Pizza trademark looked pretty much similar to Domino's Pizza, because even the coloring scheme, even the font style, they were pretty much similar. Though Dom's Pizza was a separate brand, or it was created by a separate organization, and they were selling their pizza almost in the same, their menu was even same. And of course, prices were a little cheaper because they did not have that brand affinity to sell at a premium or something like that. But it was basically sued. So generally, in the corporate sector, there is a lot of there are a lot of battles, or there are lots of wars which are basically fought over trademarks. And whenever there is an infringement, the affected company basically takes the accuser to court, and even seeks compensation, which could be into thousands of crores or billions of dollars. So these trademarks are basically the testimony of the time that the customers have generally spent with the organization. And that is how the brand recall happens. And through that brand recall, organizations are able to exhibit their supremacy, because that is the brand recall which, brings the customers back and again to the same brand. And that's how brands are trying to protect their trademarks also. Then comes the trade secrets. So generally, whatever we produce as a confidential part of our business, that comes into the trade secrets. So the case in point is, you all must have heard about the KFC brand. In KFC brand, you know that there is a specific type of spice which goes into that particular food, which makes that food very sweet, which makes that food very attractive to the consumers. And then that's why they keep on repeating, or they keep on repeat buying from KFC. Similarly, the Coca-Cola also has a formula, which is also part of their trade secret. Through that formula, they are able to create that fizzy drink which we know as Coke. Pepsi has similar one. And also now even our Indian brands like Bikanerwala, Haldiram's, they have also started moving into this dimension, where they have been able to create a recipe which is the success, which is the secret of their success, and they protect that recipe that no one else should be able to use it. So those come into the trade secrets, and they have infinite shelf life. So as long as this organization which has this trade secret, which makes them winnable, they can keep it protected for all possible time. So there is no time limit. Now let's look at the global IP landscape, how the other countries are performing, or how the countries across the world are performing. So over 3.4 million patent applications were filed worldwide, and China is leading. So almost you can see 50% of the patent applications that are being filed, China is leading by around 50% share. Whereas United States, generally United States is considered to be the giant as far as innovation is concerned, but United States is lagging pretty much behind. And they are normally focused on emerging technology sectors. So the idea behind this is researchers generally try to explore various ideas. They work on several prototypes, and these prototypes basically exhibit sometimes they exhibit desired behavior, sometimes they don't exhibit the desired behavior. So the prototypes are tweaked, and they continue to tweak them, they continue to monitor them till prototype is able to produce a desired result, and the prototype creator is now satisfied with the performance. Now they will try and go for protecting it through a patent, so that once the patent is granted, the right to use that particular prototype, or right to license that particular prototype towards mass manufacturer, goes to the person who has created this prototype or who has created that innovation. And China is leading in that. So maybe in few years, we will try and see the magnitude, how it changes, because we are expecting that this patent war is going to get intensified further. Unfortunately, India is lagging behind. We are doing some significant stuff, but generally our quality of research is not that significant, where the number of patent applications could be granted and we could mass produce that idea. So we still have a long way to go, but we will eventually get there. So this is just a comparison when you are working in an IP intensive industry vis-a-vis a non-IP intensive industry. So what kind of earnings or what kind of overall financial demography changes? So economic value of IP is pretty high, as you can see from this particular chart, that whenever you work in an IP intensive industry, so your average salary comes out to be around $15 and $17 per week. Whereas if you're working in a non-IP intensive industry, the salary is quite weak. Same goes with full-time employees, health coverage. So it shows that IP intensive industries are doing good. They are able to pay better to their people. They offer better health coverage, so on and so forth. And it is expected that 6.6 trillion annually is the market size. Though there are several patents which have not seen the light of the day, they have not been taken to the mass production stage. So it is difficult to put an exact number, but I'm expecting this would continue to grow and probably touch $20 trillion by 2030. So let's now look at the innovation ecosystem. How does it help? So IP as a catalyst for innovation, why it is so important? Because why would someone go out of the comfort zone and create something unique or create something novel? The idea is twofold. Either the person can be an innovator with a business mindset, or a person could be an innovator with a greater welfare for people in the consideration. So both cases, the financial incentives would be required, because even for the general welfare, the IP creator or the innovation creator would be, responsible for at least managing the affairs, buying the equipment, funding the research, and maybe if required, employ a few people. In addition to that, knowledge sharing is also an important aspect. So for this particular context, I would like to take the example of COVID-19 pandemic. So when COVID-19 pandemic actually struck, so initially the world was clueless about the potential or the severity of the problem. Only when thousands of deaths started occurring across the world, then the world woke up to this devastative disease or devastative pandemic. And the world across, the researchers started working on this particular type of virus and started thinking about how to counter it. And there was a lot of vaccine development initiative. There were a lot of vaccine development initiatives. They kick-started across the world. Every country had elite group of researchers who were able to conduct research to find out what is the genome sequence of this particular virus, how it can be countered, what could be the side effects. And you would be happy to know that at that particular point in time, nobody was thinking about protecting the innovation. Nobody was thinking about, let's keep this innovation to ourselves. And this allowed the researchers across the world to share whatever knowledge they had. So this means researchers in US were able to share their knowledge with researchers in India. The researchers in India were able to share their knowledge with Chinese researchers. And that's how the world was able to come onto a single platform. Why? Because they were sharing their knowledge, because now this COVID vaccine was for a greater good. Unfortunately, they were able to develop that vaccine. India was able to mass produce it. India was able to administer these vaccines to Indian citizens, and then we were able to give vaccines to other countries also. Of course, American companies did that, Russian companies did that. So there, the barrier against sharing that innovation basically came apart, and it has been proven time and again. So this was proven in 2020. Maybe if something happens in future, God forbid, nothing should happen, but something happens, the worldwide knowledge sharing will be intensified. Research and development is a common, and then it creates a competitive marketplace. And this is the beauty of innovation. Sometimes an innovator who may not have sufficient means, who may not have sufficient financial muscle, may not have sufficient backing capital backing, but they can also compete against big giants, because innovation is a big leveler where even a small individual would be able to take a fight to a big corporation, which is, running into billions of dollars. Anyhow, moving further. Legal protection we have already touched upon. Economic rewards we have also talked about, and public disclosure of technological advancements. That is a perfect case of COVID-19, where full public disclosure was made. All the research, knowledge was shared across the world. And then last but not the least, collaboration and licensing opportunity. So innovation basically also allows the person who did that innovation, created that innovation, and now that person is able to give license. So you must be aware that Apple produces mobile phones in India. Of course, they produce in China also. But whatever technology they are giving here, that is licensed and that is protected. So generally, the mothership or the motherboard, whatever that technological component is known as, that is still under the control of Apple, where we are responsible for creating the paraphernalia of devices. So this means Apple is still able to protect its IP and mass produce phones and other devices in India without sacrificing on the intellectual property. So let's now look at the patent system and how it basically drives the technological innovation. So generally speaking, the patent is the first stage where you are able to create something innovative, where you are able to do some innovation, or you are able to invent something. And after you have done that, then the patent becomes workable, or patent becomes mass producible. Now, when it becomes mass producible, there are two possible options. One, if you have the sufficient capital backing, if you have the sufficient manpower, then maybe you can mass produce it yourself. And if you are unable to do it, then you can give that license to some other organization who could mass produce it on your behalf. And whatever money is generated out of that sale, you get a percentage of it. And that's how the patent creator or the innovation creator is rewarded in terms of innovation. So the cycle goes something like this. So primarily, there is a technological push, which basically initiates some basic R&D, and it basically triggers a problem-solving scenario or a problem-solution analysis. After this problem-solution analysis has been executed, then you are able to do some research and are able to find a solution around it. After it has been done, it is generally in the shape of a prototype. And after the prototype has been tweaked number of times, and it has been able to produce the right results, then goes the demonstration stage. After the demonstration stage is over, then you have two possible options. As I mentioned before, either you do it yourself, or maybe you give that license to someone else who could do it on your behalf, and you continue to gain in the form of license fee. There are certain organizations across the world which do the patents. That means they create innovation. After they have created, they protect it. And after they have protected, they are now looking for certain licensees whom could be contacted or who could be given this license to mass produce. And that's how they are able to. And whatever money they receive, they are able to bring it back to new. And similarly, the market pull, which is the end goal. So you have created the product, you have ignited the desire, and now market will pull that product to itself by buying it from the shelf or going to showrooms and buying it off. So let's now look at few patent-driven innovations. So smartphone technology. So there are close to 16,000 patents which are exclusively for smartphones. So we generally look at smartphones from 3-4 dimensions. We look at the display, we look at the processor, we look at the RAM, ROM, etc. But if you just look at the patent ecosystem only for smartphone, there are close to 16,000 plus patents which are only focused on smartphone. So some patent would be there for smartphone devices or display devices. There would be some patent related to processor. Even there would be some processor related to neural processing unit. So if you're familiar, these days, Earlier, we used to talk about one CPU. So one CPU was responsible for performing everything related to a desktop or laptop. So it would be able to perform calculations, it would be able to run applications, it would be able to manage tasks, and it would be able to write, it would be able to manage code. And if you want to play occasional games using your desktop or laptop, the CPU would be responsible for doing that also. But as we started growing, the applications started getting bulkier. The CPU alone would not be able to handle all these tasks simultaneously. And if CPU was pressured to handle all these tasks, then the performance of CPU will go down. So the innovation creators started thinking about, let's have two channels simultaneously. So one could do the processing part, whereas all the graphic intensive activity, whether it is related to editing images, editing videos, or recording and creating videos, running some games. So let us have a separate CPU or separate category of CPU which could only handle this graphic intensive job. So the category got divided. So CPU became one, and the other category of CPU became GPU, which we know as graphical or graphic processing unit. And nowadays, the desktops and the laptops which are responsible for conducting these graphic intensive jobs, or if the owner of that desktop or laptop is fond of playing games which are bulky in nature, so they would generally look for CPU and a graphic card which would have a GPU or a graphic processing unit. Now AI has knocked at our door, and AI is with us. So now people have started talking about a separate processing unit which would be responsible for carrying out AI related jobs, because AI processing is also quite heavy or computing intensive activity which requires a lot of computing power. We generally interact with ChatGPT, so we don't know in the background that whatever instructions or whatever prompt you give, so there is some processor, there is some graphical processing unit somewhere in the world which is basically running the background operations to give you the desired results which you get out of your prompt. So as AI gets smarter, it will get bulkier. So now people have started talking about third category of CPU, which we know as NPU or neural processing unit. So now if you look at these three categories of CPU alone, you will get an idea that how many patents would have come out of it. One related to CPU, even for CPU, different architectures would have come out. Graphical processing unit would have one category, and neural processing units, they have just been introduced. But as the progress happens, as their applications continue to grow in volume, I am very much sure that even for neural processing units, there will be separate categories. In the renewable energy solutions, now we are looking at photovoltaic cells. So most common one is solar energy. So earlier there used to be photovoltaic cell which would have half watt per centimeter capture capability. But that was not sufficient because we have a good amount of solar energy in India. But if these solar panels are not able to capture the full solar power, or they are not able to capture all the sun rays that come to us, so they may not be able to produce sufficient energy. So a lot of patents actually went into that area where they continued to improve the design of photovoltaic cell. Idea was that the photovoltaic cell should be able to attract a lot of sun rays and should be able to convert them into current, which could be then passed on to homes, or it could also be passed on to energy houses or energy stores. The idea was simple, but it continued to grow and more patents got filed. And China is leading in this renewable energy. And in fact, it is the world leader as we speak. Then comes the pharmaceutical. So here America takes the lead. China is slowly catching up. Unfortunately, India is not doing so great on this front either, but hopefully we will do it. So in the pharmaceutical breakthrough, most of the pharmaceutical related patents are generally reserved with Pfizer, Glen Pharma. So they are 2-3 giants which have close to 10,000 patents in between them. And all the drug-related innovations which take place. So these companies would carry out the research. They would put in billions of dollars for conducting the research. They will run the trials. After the trials are successful and the drugs have been declared safe for usage, then they are able to take the protection of patent and mass produce it and sell it. All right. I hope till this point we are comfortable. if you would be willing to ask questions in between, I am okay with it. Or if you are willing to ask questions towards the end, I am fine. I mean, whatever you decide.
I think, sir, you have explained these concepts of copyright, trademark, patent, and everything so nicely. Most of my doubts are clear. Most of my doubts. If anybody is having any question, you may please raise your hand. Otherwise, we can take the questions at the end of the session.
In fact, I had one question, sir. There are times, when brands cannot take the subcategory trademark as part of their identity. For example, Amul can't take cool as one of the trademarks, so that's why they use KOOL. Where does that fall in this whole thing? Like, which law stops us from doing that?
Right. So, ma'am, thank you very much for asking this wonderful question. And in fact, it is a pretty relevant question. So, in our in intellectual property protection market or IPR ecosystem, there are a group of bad actors whom we call IP vultures. So, I'll give you a very funny instance. So recently, if you remember, there was a slight controversy related to Jio.com.
Right.
So Reliance was willing to launch something, and the domain was bought by someone else, very early. Right. So it generally happens. So these, I'll not say all of them are bad actors, but most of them are. So they would generally look at the brand, they would look at the particular size, and they would study that brand extensively and try to predict their next possible move, next possible product or service that they would be willing to offer. And what they would do is they would front run that brand, they would front run that organization, and would take the protection before the brand actually does. So hypothetically speaking, if RelianceJio.com is a simple website URL, correct? So this means if you have $10 per year to spend, you are capable of securing that domain name under your name, or you could take that protection, and this is my domain name. But let's say 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years later, the brand with which this association is there, that brand will, desires to launch something on the same, pattern or same words or same typography. So that brand would approach the, copyright or any intellectual property licensor and would ask for that, identity to be transferred, and they would get to know that someone else has already taken that. And now this brand would have no choice but to approach this person, negotiate a deal, and then get this intellectual property back in their name. And of course, through this, these vultures, they make a lot of money. In 80s or 90s, when there was a, internet was gradually coping up or gradually coming up, people were using internet mostly for fun, mostly for fun, entertainment, or content sharing, something like that. Most of the domain names belonging to Hollywood celebrities and American music creators, most of the brand names or most of the domain names related to them were bought by people like us. That means they had front run these celebrities. So Madonna used to be a very popular pop singer. So when she wanted to launch a website of hers, so naturally, what would be the choice? She would be willing to. She would love to have www.madonna.com. And unfortunately, when she approached the licensing authority, she was informed that this domain name has already been taken by an individual. I'm not remembering the name. And she had to pay, I don't know, undisclosed amount of money, but it was huge amount of money to take that domain back to it. Now, coming to your question, ma'am. So Amul is not able to use cool, COOL, because someone else has, taken that protection before Amul. So
Right.
That is one reason they
but
are
I
unable
also
to use it.
what I also wanted to ask was, if it is available, can they, because I've read somewhere that if you are in the similar kind of industry, then you can't. For example, Apple, they can register Apple, but if real fruit juice cannot register Apple. The same happened with Mary case, right? Then Mary is
Yes,
a kind
yes.
of biscuit, so Britannia could not trademark Mary. That's why they had to go with Marigold, right?
True, true, true.
So
True.
this is what I was confused about. Like, why can't a Mool, if it is available, then they can go for COOL.
Definitely they can go for it. So for context, Dell Corporation, which is the almost second largest PC manufacturer, they have close to 1,000 domain names. They have just bought them and they have just put them on shelf. Whether they will use them or they don't use them, that is not the idea. But anything related to Dell, for example, dellcomputers.com, dell-computers.com, dellcomputing.com, dell-computing.com, dellusa.com,
Smart move.
dellindia.com. So they have already, because the world got smarter, so organizations or brands also realize that they have to protect it. So whatever possible combinations they could think of, they had protected all those domain names beforehand, so that when they launch few products or services at a later stage, they are not running for the domain names, they are not running for the identities and all that.
That's what majorly companies need to do now with so much
True,
influx
true,
of
true,
this. Yes.
true.
Professor Monica, you
Absolutely.
also have a question. You're raising hand.
Yeah, Ridhima, thank you. Thank you so much again for the opportunity. Thank you, Tarun, sir. It was great listening to you. I just want to understand from you that academia industry collaboration is always being question marked, specifically when it comes to Indian higher education system, and the kind of engagements and collaborations that are expected to be there are not at that kind of level or reach where the global or foreign universities are catering to. So my question is, like, what do you think, what role does IP play in fostering collaboration between academia and industry? So how do you see it?
Yeah. Thank you so much, ma'am, for this wonderful question.
Thank you.
So I'll not give you a straight answer, but I will quote someone whom I heard in 2021 in India Habitat Center. And the presenter there was WIPO representative, World Intellectual Property Organization. And same question was, of course, the words could be a little different and all that, but the context was pretty much same, that what India can do to come to the global front and attract maybe funding, maybe association or collaboration opportunity with the rest of the world. And he gave a very funny but very relevant remark. And he only said that get as many intellectual property protections as possible, but don't do it out of habit, do it out of passion. So if you just try to extrapolate this statement, you will get a very real picture that academicians in India, they are doing patenting, they are trying to protect intellectual property rights and all that. But if you look at the quality of their intellectual property protection, or even for the designs and the formula or their ideas which they are trying to create intellectual property protection for, they are very trivial. I'm not trying to undermine. I come from the academic community, and I would be the last person to hurt their sentiments or something. But if you just try to look at the quality is very, very poor. As a result, the world is not looking at us. The world is not looking at us with a lot of keenness that, okay, there are researchers in India which are, doing some credible work, which they are protecting and all that, which would compel these rest of the world players to come and knock at our door and say, hey, we want to collaborate with you. Let us do joint research. You have this beautiful idea. We can make it work for you. We can get the funding and everything. That is unfortunately not happening. And I go back to that statement from WIPO representative that get as many IP protections as possible, but don't do it out of habit. Do it out of your passion. Don't do it because you have to score API score so that your performance appraisal gets intensified. You move from assistant professor to associate, or from associate to professor, full professor. Don't do it out of that habit. Do it out of a passion if you are able to do something new. And in addition, I would like to add one very small context to a Bangalore guy who added an IoT device to a recycle bin, and that actually got patented, and he was able to license that patent to a Danish company, Denmark's company, for mass producing it. So that was a passion IP protection. It was a very simple idea that the recycle bin should be able to give some signal to trash collector that this particular recycle bin is full, please come and empty it. And as soon as the trash collector gets this notification in the form of one SMS, the trash collector comes, takes the recycle bin, empties it, and puts the empty recycle bin back at the footpath or wherever that bin was placed. Small innovation, got patented. And a Danish company approached this patent creator or innovation creator and asked for a license, which this person was very happy to give. So that is the idea that we should explore, that if if academicians from India need to attract collaborations, joint research opportunities, funding opportunities from the rest of the world, they have to do some sensible innovation. They have to create something which is unique, which is good, which can be mass produced. And if that happens, I think we should be able to knock at world's door. IITs are doing good stuff, IISCs are doing good stuff, and other government and private organizations are doing good stuff. I think I saw one innovation I think about 2 years back in Bennett University, which was actually patented. And I think one business has come out of it. I'm forgetting the name of that innovation. It had something to do with integrating AI with calligraphic technique for identifying potential signs of breakdown or mental stigma or depression, so that if you do some writing stuff, the AI would be able to understand your writing style and would be able to predict what is your mental state. Are you happy? Are you sad? Or are you feeling depressed and all that? So that was able to. So these are very limited examples. We probably need to mass produce it. I have not given you the direct answer, but I am assuming I have touched upon a relevant topic.
Yes,
I hope, ma'am.
Yes, sir. So, I'm very fortunate to have good mentors with whose guidance I'm able to publish almost 16 copyrights till date. So I'm in the process of filing more. So I would like to take your advice on, I'm sure it will be relevant to rest of the participants also. Like once I have received that the copyrights are being granted. So what should be the next step for us being academicians, like other than it is already placed on the copyright journal and directory of that particular portal, and also sharing it with some of the publishers, known publishers across the globe, in case they need some kind of frameworks or structured questionnaire or some kind of models and theories, so they can take it from us. So what should be the next step if a person files the copyright? Because I don't want it to be there in my file only, with no commercial relevance and no contribution to my university. So how should I go about it? Yeah.
All right, ma'am. So I have few pointers. I think some of those pointers would be beneficial. Some of those won't be, but please try to screen them from your use case point of view and see if it fits well with you.
Yes.
So let's say the first is shouting out, because as academicians, you have access to talented students who would be creative, who would be willing to contribute towards the cause and all that. So maybe starting with a social media page where you are able to put forward an idea and you are able to engage some audience out of it, and maybe students can help students can help in broadcasting that message to reach wider audience. This is one pointer that you can think of. Second could be few demonstrations. If there are inter-college events or maybe intra-college events. So some of the work which you have created, some teasers could be played out there. Some teasers could be shown to the audience. That is another idea. Third is, ma'am, there would be certain associations where researchers or artists like you who have taken copyrights and all that, they basically gather to discuss ideas, to discuss new content, discuss new types of content which are coming into it. So maybe your presence there, being able to speak to them, being able to showcase your work, that is another work. And I think few more pointers could be explored. These are few pointers which randomly came to my mind, because generally what happens is we take some IP protection. I'm sorry, I'm not trying to demean anyone. I'm not trying to undermine the effort and the passion and all that. We just put it in our CV and we are proudly able to say, hey, I have these many patents, or I have these many, copyrights and all that. And we, put them for appraisals, that, when your appraisal is being conducted, you're able to tell them that I have these many protections and possible. Idea is not to do that out of habit or out of force, out of passion. So maybe even one, idea would become, so I'll take a very small example. We all are familiar with this movie called Three Idiots, and we all might have, seen it. We all might have appreciated this movie, and I think it appeals to every audience size. So this is based on Chetan Bhagat's story, and the book was 3 point someone, correct? So some innovative creative work got created. Of course, Chetan Bhagat continues to hold the copyright over there, and the producer of this movie, I think Vidhu Vinod Chopra, if I'm not mistaken, and Rajkumar Hirani was the director. And please correct me if I'm wrong. So they bought this story and they were able to convert that into movie. And of course, Chetan Bhagat would have earned royalty out of it. So the point is, let the world get to know about your copyright or your IP. It should not be a decorative piece in your CV, but it should be out in the public. I hope I've not given you a straight answer.
I got great insights, and I'll surely look into this. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. So can we move forward then?
Yes.
Yes,
Thank
please. We'll take the questions towards the end, or is it something very relevant for now, Logesh sir? As you wish.
Yes.
There's one.
I am open with both approaches. But I personally feel that when a conversation is happening and a question comes which is relevant to the conversation, it can be addressed. I mean, like, as
Then
I
we'll
said,
take one. Logesh sir, you can go ahead and ask the question.
Thank you so much.
This is Dr. Logesh. Sir, I have a doubt. In case if we registered a patent with 4 or 5 academician or some applicant, 4 or 5, after publishing and granted, one of the applicant is ready to convert it into a product or some next level, but all others are not ready due to financial something. So what will be the case if there is any legal formations, anything is there for that?
Correct. Thank you so much, sir. It's a very, very good question and very controversial too. And there are a number of use cases which are exactly according to this. So 2-3 researchers collaborated and they created something. One wanted to take it to the mainstream and others were not willing. So in such situations, there are few legal remedies. The legal remedies include that either the dissenting partners or dissenting researchers give away their rights to the one who is willing to mass produce it. Or if that does not happen, there is a dispute, then there are certain arbitration codes which exclusively deal in IP. Unfortunately, in India, that ecosystem is not that strong. But in US, there is an arbitration code which only looks after these IP violations and these kind of controversial ideas, where few joint IP creators have a dispute, they have a falling out, and then these matters are reported to these arbitration courts, and they of course listen to these cases. On the basis of the merit, they give their judgment, which is binding to all the participants. Just to add on to this particular point, there have been more than 10,000 plus cases where disputes have arisen among the innovators or among the IP creators. And those were reported to the arbitration court, and arbitration courts looking at the merit, they have been able to sometimes grant compensation to the dissenting parties, or they have been able to force someone to seize the right of ownership on that intellectual property. So there have been all types of those cases where in few cases, even the money were granted. I'll just give you a very quick example, which is very relevant. So if you remember, Facebook was not created by Mark Zuckerberg alone. There were two twin brothers, Twinklevoss brothers. If you just Google this term, Twinklevoss brothers. So they are twin brothers, and Mark Zuckerberg, they all three were studying in same college. And in fact, before Mark Zuckerberg took this idea and made it in the, or converted in the form of Facebook, which suddenly became a global phenomena, the world became a country as far as Facebook is concerned. That was the idea of Twinklevoss brother, not of Mark Zuckerberg. We all know Facebook is created by Mark Zuckerberg, but if you dig deeper, I would request you to do some research. You will get to know. So Twinklevoss brothers actually sued Mark Zuckerberg that you have stolen our idea, you have converted into this particular, big business opportunity. And I'm not remembering the exact compensation, but this arbitration court looked at their arguments, examined the case on the basis of the merit, and awarded a very decent compensation to Twinklevoss brothers. And they were able to give their rights back to Mark Zuckerberg, and Mark Zuckerberg was able to give them a very handsome amount of money. And after that, they exited. So these kind of issues keep on happening everywhere. US is very particular. But I hope I have given you an idea that in case of such disputes, there is a mechanism, there is an ecosystem which looks at these disputes and tries to resolve them.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Sir, I have one. There will be a
yes,
global
please
IP.
Go ahead, sir.
There is a global IP
Can you
registration.
repeat question, sir, please?
Sir, is it audible?
Yes.
Hello?
Yeah, it is
Am I
audible,
audible?
sir. I'll try to repeat your question.
Yes, sir.
You are audible, sir.
Two registrations were there, Indian patent registration and global IP registration. In case if I go for global IP registration, then it is applicable in whatever the countries it is applicable. One question. Then second one, in case if I go for registration in the global level, that particular patent, that particular theme already registered in country level, whether it is accepted by global or not.
It won't be accepted, sir. It won't be accepted. So you will have global minus accepted countries patent, or global minus accepted countries IP protection. So let's say you are looking at global and you are trying to, let's say, have 100 countries under this global IP protection, but a similar patent or somewhat similar patent is already applicable in, let's say, 5 countries. So you might be able to get something of a global, but minus those countries where these patents are actually applicable. Or
so it means what
the second option.
Remaining countries it is accepted like that.
Yes, sir. Or the second option would be that if the country specific holders are able to give their IP protection to you against some consideration. If they are able to transfer their country specific IP protection to you, then you can have a global, as you were rightly mentioning, that then the coverage would be global, because if there were country specific patents which were conflicting or which were somewhat similar to your IP protection, once you buy their rights, once you buy their IP rights from there, then you would be able to exercise this IP protection across the globe. Did I answer your question, sir?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir, I can. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So now let's quickly look at the Apple's IP strategy, how Apple is trying to create a collaborative ecosystem, but at the same time, it is trying to monopolize several technologies. So Apple has a backward integration approach. In this, they have tried to create all the components in their devices and they have tried to take control from their use and reuse. So when you talk about the processor, you talk about the memory, you talk about the other programming software which run the Apple ecosystem, those they will try to design it and they will try to backward integrate it. And when they do so, so their ecosystem becomes a closed ecosystem, or in a simple word, it is also called a monopolized ecosystem. So if you have to, if you buy an Apple iPhone, so you will only have access to Apple App Store. That means you will only be able to run the music streaming service, which are Apple certified. You are able to run all the games, which are Apple certified. You are able to conduct all the office productivity applications, which are again Apple certified. The point is, once you do that, so this closed ecosystem which you have created, it is a virtual monopoly because no other non-Apple player would be able to participate in your ecosystem. But if you look at the Google's Android approach, it is somewhat closed, but it does allow some functionality where even the independent players in the ecosystem can come and showcase their innovative strategy or showcase their innovation, and the rest of the world can actually examine it. So whether this approach is good for them or bad for them, I think it is good for them because they have become a mega corporation. They are among the richest in the world. But it is bad for the general people. Why? Because if you buy 1 lakh rupee Apple iPhone and you're still not able to use an application which you need, why? Because it is not certified by Apple or it is not capable of running on Apple ecosystem. So that's a bad mechanism for you. I'll not debate into it, but I'll leave you with this thought whether this is good or not. So in simple words, the patent portfolio or IP portfolio is designed in such a way that it creates barriers. No new players can come into the ecosystem. And when no new players can come into the ecosystem, so this means you can price your product and services. If there are no competitors in the same market space, so this means there are no sellers who can sell almost the same products and service which you are trying to sell. In such situations, you would be able to command a premium pricing on your product or services, and customers will have no choices but to pay that. And that is the result. People take pride in spending lakhs of rupees in buying Apple system, etc. and all that. And of course, licensing we have talked about. And last but not the least, so not everything is bad, but it does give you sufficient funding so that you can continue to innovate, you can continue to improve upon your existing products and service. Because at the end of the day, every organization is in this particular market to earn some revenue or earn some money. Once that money is in pocket, then they can focus on diversifying this money by creating more innovation, by developing more better or good products and services. So it's again a debatable thing whether it is good or bad, but I'll leave you with this thought. Same goes with pharmaceutical industries. So I'll simply tell you a few examples from Indian context. So somebody known to me is working in AIIMS, and there is a particular injection which is effective in curing a very particular atrophy disease. So atrophy is something which basically makes the motor function of your body redundant. So that means you're not able to move your hands, you're not able to walk properly, you're not able to even control your facial movements and everything. So that is called atrophy, and it's a very common problem. But the treatment for this particular disease is that you need to have at least 10 injections which are given to you in a gap of 14 days each, if I recall it correctly. But that one injection costs 3.5 lakh in Indian context. So this person who is known to me in AIIMS told me that this is how atrophy patients are treated. So they have to buy 10 injections, which is each worth 3.5 lakh. And then after 10 injections, the condition generally improves and the patient is cured or somewhat is made better. So I curiously asked him, like, what is so special about this injection? Why it is costing 3.5 lakh rupee? And how, of course, not many Indian households will be able to afford it. So I curiously asked this person that what makes this injection so special? Then the person told me that if I look at the cost of the material or cost of manufacturing, I can safely say that it would be below 1,000 rupee, considering that this injection is manufactured in strictest quality control procedures. You have absolutely allergen-free environment. You have ozone environment. That means all the technological advancements which can be applied to this kind of drug, the company does it. But still the cost is below 1,000 rupee. And that same injection is being priced at 3.5 lakh rupee. So I just asked this person that, are you not annoyed with this kind of nuisance? But then the person told me the other idea, that companies spent close to $20 billion in perfecting that formula, or creating that formula, and then doing the trial runs, then doing the test runs, and doing the safety runs. They ran these experiments on 1,000 plus patients. Then they approached WHO. Then they approached their pharma certifiers. And once this drug passed through all these tests, and it was done on 1,000 plus patients, and every patient reported remarkable recovery after, then this drug became available in the public domain, and the doctors could prescribe it, and patient could buy it. Of course, the cost is 3.5 lakh rupee, but company has its genuine reason that they spent close to $20 billion. They did research for 5+ years. They did so much of hard work. So again, it's a debatable question. I'll not try to give you an answer, but I hope I have given you sufficient idea or sufficient food for thought. Let's now look at, so we have already covered this. So this is a very conservative figure. Average cost of a new drug development is 1 to 2 billion. So the example which I took was, quite on the extremity, because, and there are certain drugs which have taken even more than $20 billion for development. And as a result, the companies which have spent this kind of money, they will try to recover it, because at the end of the day, they are also in it to make money out of it. But the flip side is that if a patient can get better, if a patient can actually get recovery from this particular drug, again, it's a moral question, it's a commercial question. So we may be split between the choices, but a family whose family member is suffering, they might go to any extent to save that person. But is the company right in charging this kind of exorbitant amount? Again, it is a debatable question. They have their own reasons that we spend so much money, so we are supposed to recover it. And also, the money that they are recovering is not only for recovering the cost. Maybe some of the money would go to fund future research. So maybe they have created one formula, which is, let's say, 80% success rate. So looking at the experimental data, they will try to tweak that formula. They will try to put more money into that formula to make it more effective. Maybe this time around, they are able to get 90% success rate. And this can go on and on. And so we have already talked about, should we look at the profit motive? Should we look at the generic welfare? So on and so forth. Now, this is an interesting dimension, open innovation and IP. So generally, innovation is closed. Why? Because the person who created that wants to benefit from that innovation, wants to probably make money, wants to earn fame, name, recognition across the world, wants to have a lot of publicity around it. And the idea which I'm trying to promote is open innovation. And I will also leave you with a dilemma question, whether this is actually possible. Can it be done? That means when you innovate openly, and whatever you innovate, you leave it out in the open, and you say, hey, this is my innovation. I have benefited a great deal from it. I am leaving this innovation in public domain. You please use it as per your convenience. You please try to take it, improve it, use it for yourself. And I'm not going to charge you anything. I'm not going to even sue you. I'm not going to file any court case against you. So is this possible? So many of us would believe that it is definitely possible. But I would like to say, yes, it is possible. There are certain individuals, there are certain organizations which have tried to go to open innovation, and they have taken the consideration that whatever innovations they have created, whatever inventions they have created, some of them are relevant to people, some of them are relevant to public in general, and they have tried to take profit motive out of it, and they have tried to give all these innovations out in people or out in public. Ideas very limited, patent protections very limited, but at least there is a discussion now. At least organizations have tried to move away from all the money making initiative, and they have tried to look at the general public good, and they have tried to minimize their hunger for profit and put out these innovations open in the market. So that means anyone could use it. And most of us would be familiar with one operating system called Linux. So Linux is an open source software. So when you buy a desktop or a laptop, you generally go for Windows 10, 11, whichever operating system is of your favorite nature. And you generally spend 3,500 or 6,800, depending on which Windows version you buy for yourself. If you are a student, you will probably get some discount also. But if you are a professional, then you are required to pay full. So Microsoft has a reason. Microsoft, again, as I said, put billions of dollars, created their operating system. Now they're selling you the licenses. You don't own that operating system. You are only working as a licensee. You are only using that operating system for a specific use case. Linux is an open community. They have created an operating system and they have put out the code in general public. That means every Linux operating system that you see, the code is readily available to the public. So if you are a good coding engineer, if you know how to code, if you understand the semantics of an operating system, you can take that code, you can modify it as per your requirement, and you could install it in your machine or desktop or laptop or whichever computing device you use, and you don't have to pay any license, any royalty to anyone. But as I said, these ideas are very limited. Not many organizations have been able to do so, but there are few organizations like Tesla, everybody is familiar. So all their electric vehicle patents are now general. So this means anyone who is now willing to do electric vehicle manufacturing, they can simply take those patents and simply acknowledge them and use these technological innovations for creation of this. Though this has backfired because China was able to utilize all these patents, and since they have low cost manufacturing, they are the world's largest production house. So they were able to produce electric cars at 1/10 of the price Tesla was producing. So sometimes it backfires also. IBM has also offloaded a portfolio of theirs. So IBM has not given the entire patent portfolio, but some patents they have made public. So this means anyone who is willing to work on those patents, they don't have to pay any royalty or any fee. They can simply use those patents to develop new software, new applications without considering, without looking after the legal consequences. And same as the
there's a question then Dr. Rani is asking if this is the case, then can you please clarify what can be the source of revenue and used by simple acknowledgement?
Yeah. Thank you so much, ma'am, for this wonderful question. So I hope you all have heard about that philanthropy ideas of billionaires. So when they become ridiculously rich, they try to give some money back to public by running some charities or by supporting certain orphanages and all that. So this is pretty much similar story, ma'am. So once they have made huge amount of money, and they are no longer desirous, or they are no longer hungry for more money to come to their way. So this is their way of contributing to the general public, that whatever IP protection they have taken, they have already made huge amount of money out of those intellectual property protections. Then they give it to people. As I said, the acknowledgement is only for that tracer that you have used my IP. So that is what they expect, that you should simply acknowledge them that you took an open patent from Tesla, or you took an open patent from IBM, and you did something with it without having to pay royalty. So ma'am, this is the straight story. And then there is a dark side of the story also. I'll give you an example. So in 2007, one researcher who was working with MIT was able to take some patent from Qualcomm's patent library and was able to work on it. And fortunately or unfortunately, this researcher was a very brilliant student So that researcher was able to improve a design which Qualcomm was not able to do so in the original IP protection. And this MIT researcher proudly put it out on some social media platform that, hey, I took Qualcomm's this patent number and I was able to improve their algorithm. And with this new algorithm, the energy consumption ratio has gone down by some percentage and the algorithm efficiency has gone up by some percentage. And Qualcomm immediately got to know about it because this became popular. The university started talking about it, that our researcher has done some great work. After the university got to know about it, then the neighboring universities started talking about it, then state, then nation, then almost everyone got interested. And Qualcomm immediately heard the noise and they said, perfect. So this means the original patent that we had already had a difficulty, already had a technical glitch, which was not able to run at this particular speed or was not able to give this kind of efficiency. They approached this MIT researcher and they asked that, since you worked on our patent and you created a new technological innovation, so we hold the first right. And this researcher, since was a student, was not able to defend himself. But I'll give you the full story. So Qualcomm gave this person very significant amount of money, and they were able to take this patent back and they re-released it with a new patent. So this is the hidden story, man. So one is the philanthropy story where these organizations try to say that, okay, we care for the greater good. So whatever IP protection we had, now that IP protection is off, you can use our innovation. And the hidden agenda behind this activity is that if someone is able to better their own designs, if someone is able to bring some improvement, so they can probably approach this person, maybe do some, revenue sharing, maybe with a new business idea, and maybe sometimes they take the rights altogether and they re-release it with an improved patent. I hope I've given you, because it's a wonderful question. Generally, people say that it is a beneficial approach, so it should not be criticized, but there is a dark side to it. I hope I have been able to give you some, different context.
Somebody has asked a question, utility patent example.
Can you, ma'am, please repeat?
Example of utility patent.
Okay, utility patent, for example, if you are aware of smart meters, like in our houses, we generally have electricity meters, and a meter reader comes once a month or maybe once in 2 months and takes the reading from the meter. And then you get an electricity bill from the electricity distribution company, which you pay, and then you are given electricity for the next month or next 2 months. So smart meter is one utility patent which allows a smart meter to transmit the signals or transmit the reading signals to the reader's device. So that means the reader does not need to come to your home. The towers which are installed close to your home, they would be able to get the signals reading from the smart meters, and they would be able to transmit all those readings to the electricity billing system. And through that electricity billing system, you will get the bill. So this is one, and these smart meters are not only for electricity, they are smart meters for water, there are smart meters for other public utilities also. So this is a very common utility patent which was developed by a British company. Then it got licensed to number of electricity companies and public utility services. I hope this question is answered. Okay, I'll then move forward. So we have already talked about Linux.
Okay, just a second, sir.
Yes, ma'am.
Dr. Nitesh, do you have a question?
Actually, I have a question, sir.
Dr. Vijay Prakash has a question, sir.
Yes.
Sir, please go ahead.
Sir, if first of all, I thank you for having this session going on very interestingly. And the next thing, the question I would maybe I think that you are going to come to the legal aspect of the copyright and all these things. But the question, if I sit with my friend and I discuss some idea, and next day my friend has come up with the idea and get patented it, what should I do then?
Absolutely, sir. First of all, wonderful question. If you recall that Mark Zuckerberg versus Twinklevoss brothers story, this is exactly the same story. So
Yes, sir.
you have to pursue a legal remedy. There is no other choice, sir.
Okay, thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Dr. Nirmala
Thank
Rani,
you.
you have raised your hand. Do you have a question?
Yes, ma'am, I have a question.
Ma'am, please go ahead.
Sir, good evening, sir.
Good evening, ma'am.
In the previous case of Qualcomm, if the MIT researcher was smart enough and he could file a patent before the company approaches him,
No,
will he get the patent?
Unfortunately, he was brilliant, he was smart, but he was not cunning.
Okay.
So before he could convert it into patent, Qualcomm got to know about it. As I mentioned, first the university started talking about it, that researcher has done a great job. Then some inter-university fair, all the universities in neighborhood started talking about, oh, this researcher improved an algorithm by algorithm of Qualcomm. And slowly this noise reached Qualcomm. So as I said, he was brilliant, he was smart, but he was not cunning.
Okay,
And
if he could
before he
file a
could convert
patent,
that,
sir. So my question is, if he could file a patent at that point of time,
yes,
will he get it?
absolutely. Because, ma'am, if you remember, in the initial slides, I talked about 2-3 characteristics. I hope my slides are moving.
Yes, sir.
It's a useful one and not obvious. So even if this is an improvement over an existing system or an IP, it could come under as a new, because you have added a new dimension to the product or service delivery mechanism. So if that person was cunning, or he must have been a college graduate, so must not, he was brilliant, he was smart, as I said. He could not have thought about it that, okay, I am sitting on a gold mine. If I just protect it right now, it might be billions of dollars in, maybe few years time and all that. So if he could reserve it, then Qualcomm would have no option but to either, request this researcher that please give this patent, or pay money, or maybe become a joint holder of that patent. So Qualcomm could have asked for a joint holdship, because Qualcomm could have said that you improved our algorithm, which was initially developed by us, and you improved on and you created a new algorithm, but we hold the original one. So they could have become the joint holder of that IP, and whatever money they could have generated out of this new IP, that money would have gotten shared between Qualcomm and that MIT researcher. But
Okay, sir. Thank you very
question, fantastic question, ma'am.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for your consideration.
So this shows that people, they are listening to you. Very, very dedicated.
No, that's great. That's great. And see,
Dr.
ma'am,
Shivangi Saxena wants to ask a question. Shall we take the question?
please. We are almost towards the end of our presentation.
Yes, sir. Dr. Shivangi, please go ahead with your question.
First of all, thank you so much for the insightful session, sir. So when you're talking about the utility patents, you said that they are actually improving on the efficiency part, that a person coming to your home and then taking the picture of the meter and then the bill is coming. So it's actually talking about the improvisation or the efficiency of the system. Can it be seen as a threat to the system when it comes to the revenue generation? Because human intelligence is somewhere going on to a missing part, relying entirely on the softwares or entirely on the artificial intelligence. Can it be seen that other way?
Absolutely. In fact, US, there was a robot which developed the human emotions, and this robot started chatting, or this robot started interacting with humans, exhibiting almost human-like psychology, human-like tendency. So you are very right in pointing in that out, that eventually software will give way to artificial intelligence, and artificial intelligence at some point in time would be able to mimic human intelligence and human emotions also. Absolutely, I 100% agree with you.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, ma'am. So I'll just quickly touch upon what are the next trends around which most of the IP is going to happen. And the idea behind these slides is to motivate you that if you are thinking about starting your journey in intellectual property, what kind of topics or what kind of narratives you can look at. And if you are thinking about creating an IP which could become your trademark or which could become your signature, then which particular niche or which particular narratives you can look at, and you can maybe start studying about them right now. And once you get sufficient idea, once you get sufficient interest, then you can start thinking about creating more IP on those use cases. So I'll quickly touch upon.
Professor, before you move ahead, Dr. Soren is raising hand. Can we take his question?
Please, please, please. Absolutely.
Yeah. Dr. Soren?
Hello, am I audible?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, very good evening. A nice explanation about all the basic things which are required for. Now, my question is not directly related to your presentation right now, but it is somewhere or what related to the patenting and the copyrights and something about the legal aspect. Can you throw some light, if possible, on the issue which was within Indigo and Mahindra about the 6C issue? What went wrong, and what
was
from a student point of view, I want to know that what went wrong.
Okay. So my full disclaimer in the beginning itself, so I'm not entirely familiar with this thing, but probably one, copyright protection was exploited, and the content was turned over in a manner that became insulting for another organization. But I will just stop my answer because I don't have the full idea of this fiasco, but I had heard about it, but I am not fully familiar with what exactly happened.
Okay, sir, perfectly okay. So okay, thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. That is the beauty of such sessions. First of all, it doesn't have to be a one-sided bombardment where we just shower the audience with our slide. The idea is to have more conversation around it. Now, since you have given me this, loophole, so as soon as I get the opportunity, I will study about that, and I'll, fill that gap. All right. Thank you so much for asking this.
So nice of you,
Monica, you have a question?
Yeah. So Tarun sir, when you see the the percentage of unorganized market, specifically in Indian context, it is also contributing to more than 50% in retail and other industries, specifically, when we see in totality. So there's a culture of first copy, second copy, third copy. So how is it disrupting the originality of the real time, you can say, copyright of leading brands of, you can say, Fortune 500 companies? For example, if you see the Prada in every market, and like in UAE and other parts of the world, you see when you go there and you feel happy if you can't afford to buy 1 lakh, then you go ahead with 10,000 or something, and then you come back happily. So I just want to know, how this unorganized market is disrupting and diluting the impact of that copyright, and what are the legalities that these unorganized sector owners are facing? Yeah.
Ma'am, first of all, very, good question. Fantastic question, by the way. In fact, all questions are good, but your question was a very thought-provoking one. So I'm not fully familiar who published. I think it was the International Healthcare Group, and they did a research on cosmetics.
Yes,
so
sir.
cosmetics is also very fancy and very pricey item. I'm not very much familiar with cosmetics, so please bear with me. So if I know it correctly, then one lipstick can cost 10,000 rupee also, and I think one lipstick can be there for 100 rupee as well. So this International Healthcare Group, which is a worldwide research organization, they conducted a study on cosmetics only, and a very famous brand of cosmetic, I'm forgetting, I think Chanel or Channel, something like that. They were examining the impact of these, copy cosmetics, or their second copy cosmetics or third copy cosmetics. So their revenues are getting hit by as much as 60%. So this means if you were supposed to generate $100 from the organic market, you are only generating $40. Why? Because the remaining $60 is getting distributed among these copy makers of your products. So this severely hampers the organization's financial health, ma'am. There is no second thought about it, because those $100 were meant to come to you. But out of those, only $40 came to you, and $60 got lost in the chain, which were kind of looted, or which were kind of robbed by these copy makers of yours. So this is the first part of my answer. The second part is why organizations let it happen. So there are two aspects to it. One, in the countries of their operations, if the legal framework is not that strong, law enforcement is not that strong. So this company, knowing it, that my second copy products are being sold in this market, or are being sold in this particular country, they are still not able to take appropriate action, because the legal framework of those countries are not very supportive, and they would not be able to win such cases. Why? Because the corruption at the lower level and the middle level and the higher level would prohibit them from taking punitive legal actions against people who copy their products. And the third, which may or may not be true, because this is based on my understanding, I may be wrong also, so I'm exhibiting full caution, and I'm saying it with a disclaimer that this is my individual thought process. It may not be absolutely correct. And the third possibility is that they purposefully let it happen. This is my understanding. I'm not supporting it with evidence. My common sense sometimes tells me that they purposefully let it happen, because I had read it somewhere that even bad publicity is good publicity for them. So even if their brand is getting copied, people are using them with pride. And as you rightly mentioned, that Prada example that you took, you are able to buy that bag for 10,000 rupee rather than spending lakhs of rupees on Prada bag. But still you are carrying that bag around in the world, you are carrying that bag around in the market, and people are still noticing that your brand, your bag has a Prada trademark. So maybe you bought it as a copied product, but you are still becoming their advocate, or you're still becoming their marketing affiliate, because you're proudly carrying that product everywhere you go. But as I said, ma'am, I'm saying it with the disclaimer that sometimes it feels to me. This is what I have felt. I hope I have answered to your satisfaction.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So I'll try and quickly wrap up. So I would leave you with these three technologies or three areas where you can look at. But it's not a push from my side, but I'm just trying to tell you that these three areas are the emerging areas where the next wave of IP or next wave of intellectual property is going to come from. So if you wish to contribute into this field, if you want to become an IP holder yourself, then at least you can start studying about these technologies, you can start studying about these ecosystems. So maybe you get some feel, maybe you get some idea, and if you get some idea which is novel, which has not been done before, maybe you are able to convert that into an IP, which probably can become a life-changing IP for you, or maybe can become a huge money-making opportunity besides name, fame, and recognition. I think with this, I would conclude my presentation. If we have time, we can take few more questions.
Sir, I think there's one hand raise, and
Yes, ma'am.
participants, if Tarun sir you permit, will it be comfortable from your end to share the presentation for them?
Absolutely. This entire presentation is your property. I have just put it together. You are the right holders of this presentation because it was created for you. So this presentation will be mailed to Ridhima ma'am, and she can.
I'll share it across. So we are making a drive where
Absolutely.
we'll put all the session presentations together, and in case there is any reading material that students may, participants may wish to go back to, there's one hand raise. Dr. Shivangi, you can take up the last question if you want to, and then since we are very tight on time, we'll have to close the session. Yeah. Yes, Dr. Shivangi.
Yes, please.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Sir, just one question that when you were talking about that the second copy of the brands, you were telling that eventually when you're carrying that bag, you are somehow advocating the brand. Can it seem be a deliberate cold marketing strategy from the brand side, even that despite of knowing that they are people are creating the second copies or third copies, it's like that's okay. You are in any which ways advocating our brand. Can it be seen like that?
I fully agree with you because, ma'am, I don't have data to back this up. This is what my common sense tells me, that how can a brand allow their $10,000 product to be sold at $100 and not be worried about it? So this means there is probably an acceptance from the organization side that okay, my my $10,000 product is being sold for $100. Let me be fine with it as long as this $100 buyer is able to carry my product along and showcases it to the world with pride. Look, I am carrying a Prada. Look, I am wearing Adidas. I am wearing a Rolex watch, or my common sense tells me that this could be a case.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you so much, Professor Singhal. It has always been a pleasure to hear you, the way you explain things with so much clarity. I'm sure all our doubts, all our participants' questions have already been answered to a huge extent. And thank you for agreeing every time we call you upon for anything that we need. And
Ridhima, if I may, I'm not opening my screen, so not the video but the audio. And just wanted to thank him. And every time he speaks, he proves that yes, he is my teacher, and and I always feel proud of him. And the way he was answering all questions and had all answers to almost every question is really a proud feeling. So thank you, sir, for coming. And I think this was the topic which is very close to everyone, and everyone wishes to know about it. People are interested in patents, people are interested in different things, but they don't know about it. So I think this session will also motivate people to look into ideas, especially the ones that you talked about in the last slide. So I thought I'll barge in and say thank you. I was a very silent listener, so I was there all the time. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you once
so
again.
much.
Thank you once again, sir.
Wish you all a wonderful evening, and Merry Christmas and Happy New Year to everyone. Thank you so much.
Same to you, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, sir. With this, we have come to the end of this session and the day. Feedback link is already shared on the message window as well as on WhatsApp. You are requested to please fill the feedback. So let's meet tomorrow at 6 p.m. for 2 more sessions.
Thank you so much. Have a good night, everybody. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Namaskar, namaskar, sabko namaskar.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.
May I leave now?
Yes, sir. Please. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
చులకనగా మాట్లాడాం కదా.